I came home from work and found all my belongings scattered across the front yard. My son stood there holding up his phone and recording, "This old man has no value anymore. We need a new life." My daughter-in-law laughed zoom in. The look on his face right now is worth every second. The neighbors stood across the street watching like it was a show, laughing at me. I didn't say a word. I just quietly gathered my things and walked away. 24 hours later, my phone was flooded with 100 messages. And that's when I knew the game had begun. "Hello, welcome to the story. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what you would do in that situation." Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow what happens next. Note this is a fictional story with added details to enhance the experience and provide meaningful, valuable insights. My name is Walter Kincaid. I'm 58 years old. And the night my son threw my life onto the lawn, I had just finished a 10-hour shift at the pharmacy, helping an elderly woman sort through her insurance denial. I turned onto Mimosa Avenue at 7:30 p.m. with my windows down, letting the September air wash away the antiseptic smell that clung to my work clothes. The neighborhood looked the way it always did in early autumn, historic homes settling into dusk porch lights, flickering on one by one. The Harrisons across the street on their swing with sweet tea glasses catching the last light. 30 years I'd driven this street. 30 years I'd pulled into the driveway of 1847 Mimosa, the house my wife Linda and I bought when Dilworth was still affordable and our son was still in diapers. But tonight my toolbox sat in the middle of the front lawn. I stopped the car 50 feet from the house engine, idling, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My flannel shirts, the ones Linda had folded and refolded 1,000 times, were scattered across the grass like autumn leaves. The framed photo of Linda and me at Lake Norman, the one that usually sat on my nightstand, lay face down near the mailbox. My work boots, my father's pocket watch. The quilt Linda's mother made us for our wedding. Everything that said Walter Kincaid lives here was spread across the lawn like trash waiting for pickup. Standing on the porch in the yellow glow was my son Ethan Kincaid, 26 years old, looking at me like I was trash he'd finally decided to take out. Beside him stood his wife Britney Lawson, 25 years old, holding her phone up like a weapon, recording my humiliation as if it were entertainment. I pulled into my driveway, and got out slowly. The Harrisons across the street sat frozen on their porch swing, pretending not to watch, but missing nothing. Old man Moretti next door had stopped watering his roses mid-spray. The whole neighborhood was holding its breath. Have you ever been thrown away by the people who were supposed to love you most? I walked to the porch, my legs steady even though my heart was trying to punch through my chest. Ethan stepped forward, blocking the door like a bouncer at a bar he suddenly owned. "You're done here," he said. "Tonight." His voice was flat, not angry, not sad, just done. I looked past him into the house Linda and I had scraped together a down payment for in 1995, the house where we'd raised this man. The house where she died 2 years ago, in the bedroom upstairs, while he held one hand and I held the other. My wife, Linda Marie Kincaid, had died at 56, her body surrendering to cancer in the very bedroom Ethan was now trying to steal from me. "Ethan," I said quietly, "what is this?" Britney laughed, actually laughed. "Film this," she said to her phone. "His face is priceless." I looked at my son, really looked at him, searched for the boy who used to wait by the window when I came home from work, who used to help Linda plant the rose garden out back, who used to crawl into our bed after nightmares until he was too old to admit he still had them. That boy wasn't there. "You'll regret this," I said, looking straight into Britney's camera. "Not today, but you will." Something inside me went cold. Not broken cold. There's a difference. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he didn't move, didn't speak. Britney zoomed in on my face, and I realized this was content for her. My destruction was entertainment. My pain was a story she'd tell at brunch. I could have begged, could have demanded explanations, could have called the police or a lawyer or anyone who might have told me I had rights, that you can't just throw a man out of his own home without notice, without cause, without mercy. But I didn't. I turned and walked back to the lawn. Picked up Linda's photo first, brushed the grass off the frame with my sleeve checked to make sure the glass hadn't cracked. Her face smiled up at me from 10 years ago, before the cancer, before everything turned gray. I set it carefully in the passenger seat. Then I loaded the rest. Toolbox in the trunk, the handle worn smooth from 30 years of fixing everything that broke in that house. Flannel shirts folded as neatly as I could manage with shaking hands. Work boots, pocket watch, the quilt that still smelled faintly of Linda's lavender sachet. The Harrisons never moved from their porch swing. Moretti turned his hose back on watering roses that didn't need it. 3 houses down, the Kellys stood in their doorway, backlit like witnesses at a crime scene. Nobody intervened, nobody even waved. I made 4 trips from lawn to car. Ethan and Britney watched from the porch, her phone never lowering. On my last trip, I stopped at the bottom of the porch steps and looked up at my son. "Your mother would be ashamed of you," I said. For just a second, maybe half a second, something flickered in his eyes, something that might have been the boy I remembered. But then Britney touched his arm, and it was gone. "You need to leave," he said. "Now." The house Lyndon and I built for 30 years was spitting me out like I was poison. I got in my car, closed the door with deliberate quiet, not a slam, not a whimper, just the solid click of a man who still had his dignity, even if he'd lost everything else. Linda's photo sat in the passenger seat where she used to sit on Sunday drives. My entire life fit in a 2015 Honda Civic with 140,000 miles and a check engine light that had been on since March. I started the engine, put it in reverse. The neighborhood watched me back out of the driveway one last time. I checked the rearview mirror one last time before turning onto I-77 South. Ethan had pulled Britney close, and they were kissing on the porch under the light Linda had picked out in 1998, kissing like they'd just won the lottery. Like throwing me out was something to celebrate. I drove south on I-77 with no destination, just the need to put distance between myself and that house. My hands were steady on the wheel, but I couldn't feel them. The victory kiss kept replaying in my head. Ethan pulling Britney close under the porch light Linda had picked out in 1998, celebrating like they'd won something instead of destroyed someone. I took exit 3 without thinking. The Circle K gas station sat under harsh fluorescent lights that made everything look like a crime scene. I pulled into a parking spot between a semi-truck and a rusted minivan and turned off the engine. The silence was so loud it hurt. My phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. I'd forgotten I even had it. During the eviction, during the loading of my entire life into a Honda Civic, during the drive away from 30 years of memories, my phone had been there the whole time, silent witness in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting a voicemail or a text, some final cruelty from Ethan, or a neighbor's awkward sympathy. But the screen showed something else. The voice memo app was open. Recording duration 18 minutes 4 seconds. Recorded today, 7:23 p.m. I stared at it, pressed stop. The file saved automatically. My hands started shaking then. Not from fear, from something else. Something like hope. I hit play. Static first. The rustling of fabric as the phone shifted in my pocket. Then Ethan's voice, distant but clear. "You're done here, tonight." My own voice quieter, asking what this was. Britney's laughter, the sound of my footsteps on the lawn. More rustling as I bent to pick up Linda's photo. And then after I'd walked back to the car, after I'd started loading my belongings, I heard it. Ethan's voice low and certain, probably thinking I was out of earshot. "Finally got rid of the old bastard. Should have done this months ago." Britney's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Did you see his face? Priceless, like a kicked dog. Have you ever heard your own family laugh at your pain when they thought you couldn't hear them?" I sat in that Circle K parking lot and played the recording 3 times. 18 minutes of my humiliation, yes. But also 18 minutes of their truth. The things they said when they thought no one was listening. The celebration, the cruelty, the premeditation. Should have done this months ago. This wasn't grief, wasn't impulse. This was planned. I saved the file and locked my phone. My chest felt tight, but my mind was clearing. That cold clarity from the lawn was spreading, sharpening into something I could use. Grief could be a weapon if you held it right. The semi-truck beside me pulled out, leaving me alone under the fluorescent lights with Linda's photo on the passenger seat and $892 in my checking account. I looked at her face, the picture from Lake Norman, 2015, before the diagnosis. She'd been laughing at something I'd said, her head thrown back completely free. "I need to find somewhere to stay," I said to her photo. "Just for tonight." The Extended Stay America on Tyvala Road had a flickering neon vacancy sign that felt like a prophecy. I pulled into the lot at 9:47 p.m. The night clerk at Extended Stay America was a young man in his 20s who barely looked up from his phone when I asked for a weekly rate. $350, he said, cash or card. I did the math in my head. $892 minus $350. That left me $542 for everything, food, gas, whatever came next. Card, I said. He handed me a key card to room 237, second floor. The stairs creaked under my feet as I carried up Linda's photo, my toolbox, and the flannel shirts I'd managed to fold. The room smelled like industrial cleaner, trying to mask decades of cigarette smoke. The bedspread was scratchy under my hand. The bathroom light flickered, but it had a lock, and it had Wi-Fi. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone, opened the recording, didn't play it again. I'd heard enough. Instead, I uploaded it to my cloud storage, named the folder carefully. When they start lying, because they would. I understood that now, sitting alone in a motel room that cost half of what I had left. Families like mine survived by rewriting history, by making you doubt your own memory, by telling you that you're dramatic, that you're misremembering, that it wasn't that bad. 18 minutes. That's how long it took them to destroy 30 years. But I had proof now. Proof that couldn't be gaslit away. Proof that would survive whatever story they decided to tell. I set Linda's photo on the nightstand and lay back on the bed, fully clothed, too tired to even take off my shoes. The wedding ring Linda had given me 33 years ago hung on a chain under my shirt, warm against my chest. She'd been dead 2 years, but I still felt married, still felt her in every decision I made. "What do I do, honey?" I whispered to the flickering bathroom light. "Where do I even start?" The light didn't answer. The motel room settled around me with small creaks and distant voices through thin walls. Somewhere down the hall, an ice machine hummed. Outside, I-77 traffic droned like a river that never stopped flowing. I didn't cry listening to that recording, not once. Some wounds cut too deep for tears. But lying there in room 237 with everything I owned stacked against the wall and $542 to my name, I felt something shift inside me. Not breaking, sharpening. Ethan wanted me gone. Britney wanted me humiliated. They'd filmed my destruction like it was entertainment. But they'd forgotten one thing. I was still here. I closed my eyes, the phone warm in my hand, the recording safely stored in a cloud folder they didn't know existed. The room was anonymous, temporary, nothing like home. But it was mine. For now, that was enough. Back in room 237, the phone started buzzing before I'd even set down my keys. 6 missed calls, 3 from Ethan, 2 from Britney, 1 from a number I didn't recognize. I stood in the doorway holding Linda's photo, and my phone watching the screen light up again. Ethan's name, 4th call, the vibration made the cheap nightstand rattle. I let it ring. Then I did something I'd never done before. I held down the power button and turned the phone completely off. The screen went black. The buzzing stopped. The room fell into a silence so complete I could hear the ice machine humming 3 doors down. They wanted something, a response, an explanation, maybe my submission, and I was denying them all 3. Silence, I was learning, could be a weapon. I set Linda's photo on the nightstand next to the phone and sat on the edge of the bed. The bedspread was scratchy under my palms. The bathroom light flickered on off, casting uneven shadows across the walls. Somewhere down the hall, a couple was arguing, their voices muffled but urgent through walls that were probably nothing more than drywall and decades of cheap paint. 11:47 p.m. The digital clock's red numbers were too bright in the darkness. I took Linda's photo from the nightstand and held it in both hands. The lamination was worn smooth at the corners from 20 years in my wallet. Lake Norman, 2015. She'd been wearing that blue sundress she loved, the one that made her eyes look like the water behind her. I'd said something stupid, probably a dad joke Ethan had groaned at, and she'd thrown her head back, laughing completely free. 3 years before the diagnosis. 4 years before she'd die in our bedroom, while Ethan and I held her hands and promised we'd take care of each other. What do you say to the ghost of the woman who loved you for 30 years when her son just threw you away? You told me to be smart if this ever happened, I whispered to the photo. You knew, didn't you? You saw what Britney was doing. Linda had tried to warn me. Not directly, she'd been too weak by the end, the morphine making her words soft and disconnected. But she'd pulled me close one afternoon, while Ethan was at work and Britney was downstairs making tea that nobody wanted. Be smart, Walter, she'd said, her voice barely there. If she ever, you be smart. Not angry, smart. I hadn't understood then. Thought maybe it was the medication talking her mind, wandering through fears that had no basis in reality. Our son loved us. Our son would never hurt me. But Linda had seen something I was too loyal to see, or maybe too afraid. 30 years we built that house, honey, I whispered, and he threw me out like garbage. The bathroom light flickered again. On, off, on, off. 12:34 a.m. I tried to lie down, still fully dressed, my shoes still on, but sleep felt impossible. My mind was cycling through the same questions on repeat. Where do I go tomorrow? How do I survive on $542? Do I have any legal rights to that house? Can Ethan really just evict me without warning? Should I have fought back? Should I have called the police right there on the lawn? Should I have begged? No. Linda's voice in my head was clear on that. No begging. Be smart. I sat up and pulled out my wallet. $542 in my checking account. $73 in cash. The extended stay America was $350 a week. That gave me maybe 10 days here before I was on the street for real. 58 years old, $542, one motel room. That was my entire world now. I got up and splashed cold water on my face in the flickering bathroom. The mirror showed someone I barely recognized. Same face, same gray hair Linda used to tease me about. But the eyes were different, harder. The pharmacy technician who'd helped an elderly woman with her insurance denial 10 hours ago felt like a different person entirely. That Walter had a home to go to, had a son who loved him, had a future that made sense. This Walter had a motel room and a recording that proved his family celebrated his destruction. I went back to the bed and picked up Linda's photo again. My thumb traced the worn corner where I'd held it for 2 decades. I don't know what to do, I said to her face. I don't know where to start. The couple down the hall had stopped arguing. The ice machine kept humming. Highway traffic on the 77 droned like a river that never stopped. 1:18 a.m. I thought about turning the phone back on, just to see if there were voicemails, just to know what they were saying. But something Linda had said, be smart, not angry, held me back. Whatever they wanted, whatever they were calling to say, it would still be there in the morning, and every hour I made them wait was an hour I controlled. They'd taken my house, my dignity, my sense of who I was. But they couldn't take my silence. I wish you were here, I whispered to Linda's photo. I wish you could tell me what smart looks like when your whole life is in a Honda Civic. The bathroom light flickered like a dying heartbeat. I watched it until the pattern became almost hypnotic. On, off, on, off. Proof that something broken could still function, still cast light, still serve a purpose. Maybe that was the lesson. 1:30 a.m. I lay back on the bed, fully clothed, Linda's photo against my chest, the wedding ring she'd given me warm under my shirt. Sleep didn't come, couldn't come. My brain was too loud, cycling through 30 years of memories, trying to find the moment when my son decided I was disposable. Was it when Linda died? When Britney moved in? When I didn't fight back hard enough against something I didn't even know was happening? Or maybe, and this was the thought that hurt most, maybe Ethan had just been waiting for an excuse, any excuse, to be done with the old man who reminded him too much of the mother he'd lost. The photo was getting warm in my hand. I'd been holding it so long, my thumb had worn away more of the lamination at the corner. 33 years of marriage reduced to a wallet photo with damaged edges. But she was still smiling, still laughing at my stupid joke, still completely free. I held Linda's photo until my thumb wore away the lamination at the corner. What do I do, honey? I whispered into the empty room. The phone stayed off. The morning would bring answers I wasn't ready for. The phone woke me at 6:47 a.m., Friday morning, with a violence I wasn't prepared for. 43 messages? 43 reasons they suddenly cared where I was. I'd maybe slept 2 hours. Linda's photo was still in my hand, the lamination worn at the corner where my thumb had traced her face all night. The motel room looked worse in morning light, stained ceiling tiles, curtains that didn't quite close someone else's cigarette smell embedded in everything, despite the no smoking sign. I turned on the phone. The screen lit up like a slot machine paying out. Notification after notification. Text messages, voicemails, missed calls. I sat on the edge of the scratchy bedspread and started reading. Ethan, 15 messages between midnight and 6 a.m. Where the hell are you? This is ridiculous. You need to come sign transfer paperwork. Stop being dramatic. Mom would be ashamed of you right now. That last one made my hands shake, using my Linda who'd held my hand through 33 years of marriage as a weapon, as if she'd be ashamed of me for being thrown out of my own house. Britney's messages were different. 18 of them, each one a masterclass in fake concern. Walter, I'm worried about you. Please just come home and we'll talk. You're embarrassing, Ethan. His coworkers are asking questions. This is your fault. You know that, right? If you'd just been easier to live with. We can work this out, but you have to stop this childish stunt. Childish stunt. That's what she called being homeless. Then the neighbor messages, 10 numbers I recognized from the street, Mrs. Harrison from across the way, Old Man Moretti, the Kellys from 3 houses down. Walter, are you okay? We saw what happened last night. Do you need anything? If you need a place to stay, count them with me, 43 messages. Not one from Ethan or Britney asked if I was safe. Not one asked if I'd eaten. Not one asked how I was. Only where I was and what I could sign. The pattern crystallized like ice in my chest. They didn't want me back because they missed me or loved me or felt guilty. They wanted me back because they needed something. Signatures, compliance, whatever this transfer paperwork was. I set the phone down without answering a single message. Then I showered in water that never quite got hot enough, put on yesterday's pharmacy uniform that smelled like antiseptic and eviction, and drove to Kincaid's Community Pharmacy on Central Avenue. I had a 10-hour shift starting at 8 a.m., and 58 years of conditioning told me you show up for work no matter what's falling apart at home. Even if you don't have a home anymore. The pharmacy smelled exactly the way it had for the past 30 years. Antiseptic industrial carpet cleaner, the faint sweetness of cough syrup. The fluorescent lights were the same harsh white. The shelves of amber prescription bottles stood in their perfect rows, like soldiers who never questioned orders. Dr. Harrison Miller, the 56-year-old pharmacist who had owned the pharmacy for 28 years, glanced at me over his reading glasses when I came through the back door, but said nothing. Just nodded and went back to reviewing prescriptions. I clocked in, tied on my white coat, started filling the morning queue like nothing had happened. Like my entire life hadn't been thrown onto a lawn 14 hours earlier. Mrs. Higgins came in at 9:30 with her blood pressure medication. I counseled her about taking it with food, not on an empty stomach. Mr. Rodriguez needed his insulin prescription transferred from another pharmacy. I made the calls handled. The paperwork smiled when he thanked me in Spanish. My hands knew what to do. Count pills, check dosages, label bottles, counsel patients. 30 years of muscle memory carrying me through when my brain was somewhere else entirely. Transfer paperwork. That's what Ethan called it. Like 30 years of my life was just paperwork. My colleague Rosa Mendez, a 38-year-old lead pharmacy technician who'd worked at Miller's for 15 years, noticed immediately when I fumbled the 3rd prescription count. Walter. Her voice was quiet. You okay? You've been staring at that bottle for 2 minutes. I looked down. 50 milligrams of metoprolol. I'd counted to 12 3 times and lost count every time. I'm fine, I said, just tired. Rosa looked at me the way Linda used to when I was lying about something that mattered. Steady, patient, seeing straight through the bullshit. You worked yesterday, she said. 10-hour shift. Then you're back today for another 10. When did you sleep? Enough, I lied. She didn't push. Just handed me a bottle of water from the mini fridge we kept in the back and went back to processing insurance claims. But I felt her watching me throughout the morning. Not suspicious, concerned. It hit me around lunch when I was eating a gas station sandwich in my car because I couldn't afford anything else and couldn't face the break room questions what the difference was. Rosa asked how I was. Ethan and Britney demanded where I was. One was human, the other was logistics. The afternoon crawled. Mrs. Miller came in for her husband's diabetes medication and chatted with Dr. Miller in Mandarin while I filled the prescription. A young mother with 3 kids picked up antibiotics and apologized when her toddler knocked over a display. I helped her pick up the boxes and told her it was fine. Kids will be kids. And she looked so grateful I thought she might cry. People. Just people trying to survive their own days, their own problems. And here I was, pretending I wasn't one prescription away from falling apart. By 6 p.m., my feet hurt and my hands moved on autopilot. Dr. Miller had left an hour earlier for a family dinner. Rosa and I closed up together, counting the register, locking the controlled substances cabinet, setting the alarm. She caught me at the back door. Walter, she said quietly, when you're ready to talk, I'm here. I nodded, unable to speak, because someone had just offered me something I hadn't had in years, the choice to be honest. The Waffle House at 2 a.m. on Saturday was full of people with nowhere else to go. I was one of them now. 58 years old, and I finally understood what I'd been all along. I'd driven there after my overnight shift ended, unable to face the motel room yet. The server at Waffle House was a woman in her 40s who'd seen too many 2 a.m. regulars to ask questions, just refilled my coffee without a word. I ordered scattered, smothered, covered hash browns because they were cheap and I needed something real in my stomach. Rosa's words from the pharmacy kept echoing. When you're ready to talk, I'm here. I wasn't ready, but sitting alone under harsh fluorescent lights with the grill sizzling and country music playing low, something clicked into place. The 43 messages, the pattern. Where are you? Sign this, stop being dramatic. Not, are you safe? Are you okay? Did we hurt you? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through them again. Ethan's demands, Britney's blame, transfer paperwork, signatures required. They didn't kick out a burden. They fired infrastructure. Have you ever realized the people calling you useless were the ones who couldn't function without you? For 30 years, I'd paid the bills, scheduled the maintenance, handled the errands, kept that house running while Linda fought cancer, and then while Ethan grieved and brought home a wife who saw opportunity where I saw family. They'd labeled me freeloading, called me lazy, said I was living off them when I'd bought that house with Linda in 1995, when Ethan was still in elementary school. I wasn't the burden, I was unpaid infrastructure, and infrastructure doesn't get severance pay. The hash browns tasted like salt and grease and clarity. I ate mechanically, washing them down with bad coffee watching the door as other night shift workers filtered in. A nurse still in scrubs, a trucker with 18-hour exhaustion in his eyes, a young couple who looked like they'd been fighting, all of us with nowhere better to be at 2 a.m. on a Saturday. My phone rang. I almost didn't answer trauma response from 2 days of silence. But the name on the screen was Dr. Miller. At 2:30 in the morning, I answered. Hello, Walter. His voice was quiet, careful. You're not alone. Understand? I couldn't speak for a second. My boss, who I'd worked for 30 years, who'd seen me come in exhausted after Linda's funeral, who'd never asked for explanations, was calling me at 2:30 a.m. just to say I wasn't alone. Yes, I managed. Thank you. See you Monday, Dr. Miller said and hung up. 3 sentences, that was all. But I sat in that Waffle House booth with my phone pressed to my ear long after he'd disconnected, feeling something I hadn't felt since Linda died seen. Sunday morning came too fast. I'd slept maybe 3 hours back at the motel before Rosa texted at 7:30 a.m. Dunkin' Donuts, Independence Boulevard. 8 a.m., don't argue. I didn't argue. She was already there when I arrived, 2 coffees and a box of donuts on the table. The Sunday morning crowd swirled around us, families in church clothes, couples reading newspapers, teenagers nursing hangovers. Rosa pointed at the chair across from her. Sit. I sat. Tell me exactly what happened, she said. No protecting them. Every detail. So I did. I told her about coming home to my belongings on the lawn, about Ethan and Britney filming, about the 18-minute recording I'd accidentally captured, about Linda dying 2 years ago, and Britney moving in and everything slowly changing until Thursday night, when it all exploded. Rosa listened without interrupting. When I finished, she pushed a glazed donut toward me. Eat, she said. You're running on fumes. I took a bite. It was too sweet stuck in my throat, but I forced it down. You know why I believe you, Rosa said. Because I lived it. Different man, different country, but same trap. She rolled up her sleeve. A scar ran from wrist to elbow, faded but unmistakable. My ex-husband in Guadalajara, she said quietly. Broke my arm, told everyone I was clumsy, said I was lucky he stayed with me. She rolled the sleeve back down. I left Mexico with $200 and my sister's phone number. That was 12 years ago. Rosa had escaped a man who broke her arm. She understood what I was just beginning to see. So here's what we're going to do, she said, pulling a napkin from the dispenser. She clicked her pen and started writing. Housing, job, evidence, legal, boundaries. 5 words in her neat handwriting. Housing, she said. You need stable, not motel. Apartment room, something you can afford longer than 2 weeks. I nodded. Job you keep, Miller's pays steady and you've got 30 years there. They can't touch that. Another nod. Evidence you've got, recording messages, neighbors as witnesses. You document everything from now on. Screenshots, dates, times. Already doing that, I said. Rosa smiled grimly. Good. Legal you might need it. We'll see. And boundaries. She tapped the word hard enough to tear the napkin. This is most important. Boundaries mean you don't negotiate with terrorists. They're not. They threw you out and filmed it for fun, Rosa said flatly. What do you call that? I had no answer. Here's the test, Rosa said, leaning forward. If Ethan called right now, crying, begging you to come home, saying Britney left and he's sorry, would you go back? Juan and why nos des wines? I opened my mouth to say yes, to say of course he's my son, he's hurting. But the word that came out was different. No. Rosa's expression didn't change. Say it again. No. One more time, look me in the eye. I met her gaze. No, I wouldn't go back. Good, Rosa said. Because you didn't lose a home, Walter. You escaped a trap disguised as family. Now we build you a real one. The napkin plan looked like chicken scratch. It felt like a lifeline. We sat there another hour, Rosa asking questions me, answering both of us, drinking burnt coffee and picking at donuts neither of us wanted. She told me about apartments she'd heard were cheap, about a lawyer her cousin knew who did free consultations, about how trauma makes you doubt everything, even the evidence in your own hands. You're going to want to answer those messages, she said as we stood to leave. You're going to want to explain, to defend yourself, to make them understand. Don't. Why? Because you can't reason with people who benefit from your confusion, Rosa said. They don't want to understand. They want you back in the trap. My phone buzzed mid-sentence. Email notification. I glanced at the screen. Subject, important documents. Signature required. Sender Whitmore and Associates Legal. I turned the phone face down on the table. Rosa noticed but said nothing, just handed me the napkin with a 5-word plan. My phone buzzed mid-conversation. Email notification. Subject, important documents. Signature required. Sender Whitmore and Associates Legal. I turned the phone face down. Monday afternoon, I counted what I had left: $892 minus $350 motel, minus $123 for food and gas. $419 between me and the street. Time to find somewhere cheaper than a motel. Rosa's napkin plan sat folded in my wallet next to the worn photo of Linda. Housing, job, evidence, legal, boundaries. The first item was circled twice in her handwriting. I'd been ignoring that legal email for 24 hours, telling myself I needed foundation first. But foundation required money I didn't have. The first apartment manager took one look at my 2 duffel bags and work uniform and quoted me $1,200 like it was a test I was supposed to fail. Studio apartment in South End, all glass and steel, and young professionals who'd never slept in their cars. I thanked her and left. The second place was an efficiency 40 minutes from the pharmacy. The manager showed me a unit that smelled like mildew and had water stains on every wall. $600 a month, she said, like she was doing me a favor. But 40 minutes each way meant gas I couldn't afford and exhaustion I couldn't survive. The third was a basement apartment where the landlord asked if I had any felonies before he'd even shown me inside. $419. That's what 30 years at the same pharmacy was worth when your family throws you away. I sat in my car outside that basement apartment and pulled out my phone. The legal email from Whitmore and Associates sat in my inbox like a bomb I kept refusing to defuse. But before I could make myself open it, another notification appeared. Craigslist at 1-bedroom duplex above garage, $800 per month. Euclid Avenue, walking distance to shops. Euclid Avenue, I knew that street. 10-minute walk from Miller's Pharmacy. The landlord, Patricia Russo, a 65-year-old retired ICU nurse with silver hair and kind eyes, met me at the duplex 20 minutes later. The place was modest, 1 bedroom above, a 2-car garage, separate entrance up, exterior stairs, small kitchen and bathroom. But it was clean. The windows had actual curtains. The hardwood floors didn't creak. $800 a month, Patricia said, watching me look around. First month and deposit up front. $1,600 total. I had $419. I can't, I started. She held up a hand. Why do you need a place so fast? I could have lied. Could have said job relocation or divorce or any of the acceptable reasons people move suddenly. But something about her nurse's eyes, the way Linda used to look at me when she knew I was hiding pain, made me tell the truth. My son kicked me out, I said. Patricia's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. Recognition, maybe, or just the tired acknowledgement of having seen this story too many times. Say no more, she said. I've seen that story. Nurse for 30 years. I see you. You see families at their worst. She pulled out a rental application. Give me first month now if you can. Deposit when you get your next paycheck. I'll hold it for you. I can't pay first month, I admitted. I have $419. Then give me that as deposit and first month when you can. I know Dr. Miller. If you work for him, you're good for it. I stared at her. Why would you do that? Because 30 years ago, my husband's family tried to steal our house when he had his first stroke, Patricia said. Told me I couldn't manage it alone, that I should sign it over for safekeeping. I was an ICU nurse. I'd kept people alive with my bare hands. But his brother treated me like I was incompetent. She handed me the application. I know what it looks like when family turns predator. I took the application with shaking hands. That evening back at the motel, for what I hoped was the last time, I finally opened the legal email. The subject line had been taunting me for 30 hours. Important documents. Signature required. I clicked it. The PDF loaded slowly dense paragraphs of legalese swimming across my phone screen. I had to read it 3 times before the words made sense. Quiet title action. Petition filed by Ethan Kincaid and Britney Lawson. Property 1847, Mimosa Avenue, Charlotte, North Carolina. Grounds abandonment by Walter Kincaid. Claimants seek full ownership transfer. How do you steal a house from the man who bought it? You film him leaving, then call it abandonment. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. They weren't just evicting me, they were taking the house. Linda's house. The house we'd bought in 1995 with our life savings. The house where she'd planted roses every spring. The house where she'd died in my arms 2 years ago, while Ethan held her other hand and promised we'd take care of each other. They were erasing her. I read the document again, filed September 26th. That was 3 days after they threw me out. 3 days. They'd had this planned. The filming wasn't just cruelty. It was evidence. Look, Your Honor, he left. He abandoned the property. We have video proof. I couldn't breathe. The motel room felt like it was closing in. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to the pharmacy, even though my shift didn't start for 2 hours. Rosa was there in the back processing insurance claims. Laster. She looked up concerned. You're not scheduled until... I handed her my phone. She read in silence. I watched her face change confusion, first, then understanding, then a fury I'd never seen before. Those bastards, she said, voice shaking. Walter, they're trying to steal your house. I know. No, you don't understand. She scrolled through the document. This is fraud. Actual fraud. You didn't abandon anything. They threw you out and filed this 3 days later. You have the recording. You have the messages. You have neighbors who witnessed it. They weren't just taking my home. They were erasing Linda. Every rose she planted, every room she painted. Gone? When was this filed? Rosa demanded. September 26th. That's 4 days ago. How long do you have to respond? I scrolled to the bottom. 30 days from service of notice. Have you been served? I don't know. I've been in a motel. They're probably trying to serve you at the house, Rosa said, which means the clock hasn't started. But Walter... She looked up from my phone, her face dark with fury I'd never seen before. You need a lawyer, now. The phone hit the floor at 6:47 Tuesday morning, vibrating so violently it sounded like something dying. 40 messages in 7 hours. The wolves were circling. I'd fallen asleep with Rosa's fury still ringing in my ears. You need a lawyer, now. But lawyers cost money I didn't have, and the quiet title lawsuit sat in my inbox like a ticking bomb with a 10-day fuse. I picked up the phone, scrolled through the messages, read them systematically the way you'd read evidence at a crime scene. The messages from Whitmore and Associates law firm were professionally cold-threatening default judgment if I didn't respond to their settlement offer within 10 business days. Settlement offer. That's what they called stealing my house. Britney had sent 18 messages between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. Walter, this is your fault. You abandoned us. Ethan is devastated. Do you even care what you're doing to him? Just sign the papers and stop dragging this out. We can all move on. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I'm worried about you, but you're being so selfish. Gaslighting. That's what Rosa had called it. Making you doubt your own reality. Making you think you're the problem when they're the ones committing fraud. Ethan's messages were colder, 15 of them. No fake concern, just demands. You have 10 days to respond or you lose everything. The lawyer says this is open and shut. You abandon the property. Mom would want you to do the right thing. Using Linda again, my dead wife, as a weapon. As if she'd want me to hand over the house we'd built together to the son who threw me out and the woman who'd manipulated him into it. 10 days. That's how long I had to save 30 years. 10 days to prove I existed. I got dressed in yesterday's work uniform and drove straight to Miller's pharmacy. Rosa was already there processing the morning queue. She took one look at my face and pulled me into the back room. How many messages? 40. Jesus. She grabbed my phone and started scrolling. This is coordinated. Look at the timing. Lawyer at midnight. Britney through the night, Ethan at dawn. They're trying to break you. They're doing a pretty good job. No, Rosa's voice was fierce. They're panicking. If they had a strong case, they wouldn't need 40 messages in 7 hours. They wouldn't need to gaslight you and threaten you and use your dead wife against you. She handed back my phone. I called my divorce lawyer's colleague, property law specialist. He can see you this morning, 10 a.m. I have $219, she finished. I know, consultation is $200. I already told him you're coming. I stared at her. That leaves me with $19. That leaves you with a fighting chance, Rosa said. What's $19 worth if you lose your house? Michael Navarro's law office was downtown, modest but professional. The attorney Michael Navarro, a 43-year-old property law specialist who'd handled dozens of elder fraud cases, reviewed my documents across his desk with the focused intensity of someone who'd seen this story too many times. I'd brought everything, the 18-minute recording, the screenshots of messages, the quiet title lawsuit, the timeline. Navarro listened to the recording once, read through the lawsuit twice, made notes in tight, precise handwriting. Mr. Kincaid, he said finally, this is textbook fraud. I know. No, I mean textbook. I could use this as a teaching example. He tapped the lawsuit. They evict you September 23rd. File abandonment claim September 26th. 3 days. That's not abandonment, that's theft. He circled something on the document. And these signatures claiming you agreed to transfer ownership, are those yours? I looked at where he was pointing. My name and handwriting, that wasn't mine. No. Forgery, Navarro said flatly. Criminal fraud. You have the recording proving they planned this. You have neighbors as witnesses. You have messages proving you didn't abandon anything they threw you out. Have you ever had to choose between eating and fighting for your dead wife's memory? So I can win. Navarro met my eyes. You can win, but you must respond within 10 days or you lose by default judgment. The court will assume you're not contesting, and they'll grant the title transfer. What does a response cost? Its filing fee is $278, plus my retainer I do payment plans for elder fraud cases, $500 down rest over time. I had $219 to my name. The consultation was eating $200 of that right now. You can't afford not to, Navarro said. This isn't about money, Mr. Kincaid. This is about whether your son and his wife get away with stealing your house, with forging your signature, with erasing your dead wife's legacy. Linda's roses, the bedroom where she'd died, the kitchen where we'd had coffee every morning for 33 years. What do I have to do? It's sign the retainer. I file an answer to the lawsuit motion to dismiss for fraud and counterclaim for damages. We subpoena the recording, the messages, the neighbors. We make this so ugly they wish they'd never tried it. I thought about the $19 I'd have left after this consultation. Thought about the $800 deposit Patricia needed for the duplex. Thought about the gas money and food money and everything else I didn't have. Then I thought about Ethan and Britney kissing on that porch like they'd won the lottery, celebrating my destruction. $219. That was my entire safety net. I spent $200 on a lawyer. Some choices aren't really choices. File the response, I said. Whatever it takes. Navarro pulled out a retainer agreement. I need $500 down, but given your circumstances, I'll take $200 now and set up a payment plan for the rest. Agreed. I counted out the bills, watched my safety net disappear, signed the agreement with shaking hands. Mr. Kincaid, Navarro said, standing to shake my hand. This takes courage. Most people in your position just give up, walk away, let the family take everything. I thought of Linda's face in that photo from Lake Norman, her laughing at my stupid joke, completely free, completely alive. That most people aren't fighting for what I'm fighting for, I said. When I walked back into Miller's pharmacy that afternoon, Dr. Miller was waiting at the counter with the look of a man who'd made a decision. We need to talk, he said quietly. I followed him into the back office. Rosa was already there, sitting in the chair across from his desk, like this had been planned. Dr. Miller closed the door, sat down, looked at me over his reading glasses the way he'd looked at me 1,000 times over 30 years. But this time was different. I heard you saw a lawyer, he said. Rosa must have told him. I nodded. And I spent my last $200 on a retainer, I said. I have $19 left. I can't afford the apartment deposit Patricia's holding for me, and I probably can't afford to eat this week, but at least I'm fighting back. Dr. Miller was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his checkbook. 30 years you've worked here, Walter, he said. 30 years. You showed up the day after your wife's funeral. You worked through the pandemic when half the staff was terrified. You've trained every new tech we've hired. You've never called out sick. You've never asked for anything. Dr. Miller, this is what loyalty means, he said, writing. He tore out the check and slid it across the desk. $800, take the advance. We'll deduct it from your next 3 paychecks. $100 a week, you can handle that. I stared at the check. $800, the apartment deposit, stability. A place that was actually mine. I don't know how to thank you, I said. You already have, Dr. Miller said. Every shift, every patient, every time you stayed late because someone needed help understanding their prescription. That's the thanks. Loyalty. That's what Dr. Miller called 30 years. My family called it freeloading. Rosa drove me to the bank in her truck. We cashed the check, drove to the extended stay motel one last time. I packed my 2 duffel bags, everything I owned, fit in 2 duffel bags, and the box of Linda's photos, my pharmacy uniforms, the quilt her mother had made us, the toolbox I'd carried from the lawn. That's it, Rosa said, looking at my belongings in the bed of her truck. That's your whole life. For now, I said. We build from here. She smiled. There's my fighter. Before we drove to Euclid Avenue, before I saw Patricia waiting on the porch with sweet tea, I need to pause for just a second. Are you still with me? Comment A, if you think the next part of Walter's story brings more hope. Or B, if you think there's another blow coming, and add 1 short reason so I can see where you think this is heading. A quick note, what follows includes some recreated moments to capture the emotional weight of rebuilding after loss. The heart of it. The lesson is what matters most. Patricia Russo was waiting on the porch when we pulled up to the duplex on Euclid Avenue. She had a pitcher of sweet tea and 3 glasses on a tray, condensation running down the sides in the September heat. Welcome home, baby, she said as I climbed out of Rosa's truck. It's not much, I started. It's yours, Patricia said firmly. Nobody throws you out of here. I know it's just 1 room above a garage, but it's clean and it's safe and it's yours for as long as you need it. Patricia's sweet tea tasted like every grandmother I'd never had, like someone cared if I was thirsty. Rosa and Patricia helped me carry the duffel bags up the exterior stairs to the duplex. The place was exactly as I'd seen it. Monday 1 bedroom, small kitchen bathroom, with a shower that actually had good water pressure. The hardwood floors were old but solid. The windows had curtains that closed all the way. There was a deadbolt on the door that only I had the key to. Linda's photos went on the dresser, her quilt on the bed. My work uniforms in the closet that was mine, in the apartment that was mine, in a place where nobody could throw me out, because I'd signed a lease and paid a deposit and had rights. This is how it starts, Walter Rosa said, standing in the doorway. 1 room, 1 safe place. You build from here. Patricia left another pitcher of tea in the fridge and told me if I needed anything at all, she was downstairs and I should knock. Then she and Rosa left me alone in my first real space since the eviction. I sat on the bed, looked around. 1 room, 1 safe place. It was enough. I unpacked, slowly making the space mine. Linda's photo from Lake Norman went on the nightstand where I could see her face when I woke up. The wedding ring on its chain stayed under my shirt, warm against my chest. The 18-minute recording stayed on my phone, backed up 3 places ready for court. The duplex was quiet in a way the motel never had been. No couple arguing through thin walls, no ice machine humming, no highway traffic. Just the sound of September evening through the window screen, crickets starting their song, distant dogs barking, someone mowing their lawn 3 houses over. Normal sounds, safe sounds. I was hanging my last uniform in the closet when my phone rang. Unknown number. I stared at the screen. Could be Whitmore and Associates with more legal threats. Could be Ethan calling from a number I didn't recognize. Could be Britney trying a new angle. First time in 5 days the phone rang and I wasn't afraid to answer. Almost. But I'd told Michael Navarro I was fighting for Linda's roses, told myself I wasn't running anymore. You can't face your battles by avoiding every call. My finger hovered over decline. Then I thought of Dr. Miller's check, Patricia's sweet tea, Rosa's truck, the people who'd shown up when it mattered. I wasn't alone anymore. The phone screen showed unknown number, could be lawyers, could be Ethan, could be worse. My finger hovered over decline. Then I remembered I wasn't running anymore. I answered. Hello. The voice on the other end was elderly careful, like a man who'd spent a lifetime measuring his words. Mr. Kincaid, this is Gerald Moretti. I live 2 doors down from your house from 1847 Mimosa, number 1843. I sat down slowly on the edge of the futon. The duplex was still strange, still smelled like someone else's life, but Gerald Moretti's name I knew. Linda used to bring him sweet tea every Sunday. He'd been widowed longer than we'd lived on that street. "Mr. Moretti," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Something I should have told you weeks ago, but I didn't know where you'd gone. I tried calling your old number, but it was disconnected." I waited. Outside a dog barked. A car door slammed. "I know what your son did to you," Gerald said quietly. "I saw the whole thing. September 23rd. I was on my porch when they threw your belongings out." My hand tightened on the phone. "You saw." "I did, and I'm sorry I didn't come over. I'm 74 years old, Mr. Kincaid, and I was afraid. Your son's a big man, and that woman he married..." He paused. "But that's not why I'm calling." I closed my eyes. The rage was there, volcanic and patient waiting. "I've been documenting something," Gerald continued, "for 4 months now. Every Tuesday and Thursday, like clockwork, a white Ford F-25 parks in your driveway at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The driver goes inside. He stays until 3:30. I started writing it down in July because it seemed odd Linda had just passed, and you were at work, and this truck kept coming." My chest went tight. "What are you saying?" "The driver's name is Kyle Kowalski," Gerald said. 31 years old. He's a contractor, does renovations. And every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 4 months, he's been inside your house with your daughter-in-law." The room tilted. "You need to hear this." "I have photographs," Gerald said. "Time-stamped. The truck in the driveway. Him going in through the front door. Britney letting him in. I can see your bedroom window from my porch, Mr. Kincaid. I can see when the curtains close at 1:15. I can see when they open again at 3:20. I have it all written down." I couldn't speak. My throat had locked. 52 visits, Gerald said. 26 Tuesdays, 26 Thursdays. July 9th through September 22nd, the day before they evicted you. 52. I thought of Britney's smile the night they threw me out. I thought of Ethan kissing her under the porch light Linda had chosen in 1998. I thought of the messages, "We need the house. It's not personal, we're starting over." "Hey, they planned this," I said. My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "Yes," Gerald said gently. "I believe they did." I stood up, walked to the window. The duplex faced a parking lot, a dumpster, a chain-link fence. 52 visits, 4 months. Linda died on June 18th. Britney started sleeping with a contractor 3 weeks later, in the bed Linda and I had shared for 30 years. "Oh, well, why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I was a coward on September 23rd, Gerald said. "I should have walked over. I should have said something. I didn't. But I can do this. I can give you the evidence. I can testify if you need me to." I pressed my forehead against the window. The glass was cool. My reflection looked old. "Mr. Moretti," I said quietly, "you're not a coward. I'd like to email you the photographs," he said. "I have them organized by date. I also have my handwritten logs. I kept them in a notebook. My late wife always said I was too meticulous, but..." His voice cracked slightly. "I think she'd approve of this." I gave him my email address. My hand was shaking when I wrote it down. "One more thing," Gerald said. "The contractor Kyle Kowalski. He drives that white F-25 with a business decal on the side. Kowalski Property Solutions." I looked him up. "He does kitchen renovations, bathroom remodels, that sort of thing. Your son hired him in May to redo the master bath." The master bath, where Linda used to stand in her white robe brushing her hair in the mirror. They gutted it. They erased her. And then they used it. "Thank you," I said. My voice was barely audible. "Thank you, Mr. Moretti." "You're a good man, Walter," Gerald said. Linda used to tell me that. Every Sunday when she brought me tea. She'd say, "Gerald, I married the best man I ever knew." I want you to know I remember that. When the call ended, I sat down on the futon again. My phone was still in my hand. I stared at the screen, waited for the email. My chest felt like it was caving in, but my eyes stayed dry. I had learned that much in 5 days. Tears were a luxury I couldn't afford. The email arrived at 8:47 a.m. 52 photographs, 52 entries, and a handwritten log, all time-stamped and dated. Evidence. I forwarded it to Michael Navarro with the subject line, "Motive." Then I opened my messages. Rosa had texted at 8:15, "Call me when you're up." I was about to reply when my phone buzzed again. Another call, another unknown number. This time the area code was local, 704. "Charlotte," I answered. "Mr. Kincaid." A woman's voice clipped and professional. This is Jennifer Caldwell from Whitmore and Associates. I'm calling regarding the quiet title action filed by Ethan Kincaid. We need to discuss your options for settlement. Men borst, entonces estás en demand. No, I said. Silence. I'm sorry, she said. I said no, I'm not settling, I'm not signing. And you can tell Ethan and Britney that I have 52 photographs of Kyle Kowalski's truck in my driveway, time-stamped, dated. 4 months of Tuesdays and Thursdays while I was at work. Another pause, longer this time. I see, she said slowly. You'll be hearing from my attorney, I said. Michael Navarro, he'll be filing a counterclaim, fraud, forgery, and I'm going to make sure a judge sees every single photograph. I hung up. My hands were steady. My pulse was steady. I felt nothing but cold, clear focus. Then Rosa called. Walter, she said, and her voice was shaking. I just got a call from that lawyer, Whitmore. She said, Walter, she said Britney's going to file a restraining order. She's saying you're harassing them. She's saying you're unstable. I closed my eyes, and letter I said. At 12:47 p.m., standing behind the prescription counter at Miller's Pharmacy, my phone buzzed once, then, twice then. Didn't stop 60 messages in 3 hours, and I watched my son's entire world collapse in real time. The first message came while I was filling Mrs. Moretti's blood pressure medication. Ethan, 12:51 p.m. Dad, where are you? Britney says you're spreading lies about her. Kyle Kowalski just showed up. What is happening? I set the bottle down carefully. Continued counting pills. 26, 27, 28. Another buzz. Ethan, 12:53 p.m. Dad, please answer. Kyle is saying you have photos of him at our house. What photos? Britney is freaking out. 30. I capped the bottle, printed the label, placed it in the pickup bin. Dr. Miller appeared beside me, concern creasing his face. Walter, your phone? I know, I said quietly. Buzz. Britney, 1:08 p.m. Walter, you need to call off your neighbor. This is harassment. Gerald Moretti has been taking pictures of my house without permission. I'm calling the police. I picked up the next prescription, Mr. Dalton's insulin refill. Buzz. Ethan, 1:15 p.m. Mrs. Kowalski just told me she saw Kyle's truck here every Tuesday and Thursday since July. Dad, is that true? Did you know about this? Dr. Miller touched my shoulder. Walter? I'm fine, I said. My hands were steady. The insulin syringes went into the bag one by one. Here's what you need to know. About watching your son's marriage implode via text message, you feel nothing except the grim relief of being proven right. Buzz. Britney, 1:34 p.m. Ethan is being manipulated. Your father is mentally unstable. He's been harassing me since Linda died. This is what grief does to people. Buzz. Ethan, 1:41 p.m. Kyle just admitted he was doing work on the house. He said you hired him. Is that true? Why would you hire him and not tell me? I almost laughed. Kyle was covering spinning, trying to save himself. I went back to work. Buzz. A neighbor I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. 1:52 p.m. Walter. I don't know if you've heard, but there's a situation at your old house. Police are there. Thought you should know. Buzz. Another neighbor. 2:03 p.m. Is everything okay? Saw Ethan and a contractor arguing in the driveway. Britney was crying on the porch. I turned my phone to silent, slid it into my pocket. The vibrations continued like a second heartbeat. Dr. Miller brought me coffee at 4 p.m. You don't have to stay, he said gently. Rosa can cover. I'm staying, I said. He nodded, didn't push. That was the thing about Dr. Miller, he understood dignity. I worked through my shift, filled prescriptions, answered questions, smiled at customers. My phone vibrated 47 times between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. I didn't look once. At 6:15 during my break, I stepped outside. The September evening was cool, the sky fading to purple. I finally checked my phone. 12 messages from Britney, 18 from Ethan, 7 from neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years, 3 from Kyle Kowalski, threatening legal action against me for defamation and stalking. I scrolled through them slowly, methodically, my coffee growing cold in my other hand. Britney 2:17 p.m. Walter, you need to tell Ethan the truth. You're trying to destroy our marriage because you're bitter. This is elder abuse. Ethan 2:34 p.m. Dad, I need you to explain. Kyle says the photos are fake. Gerald Moretti is 74 years old. He probably got confused about what he saw. Please call me. Britney 3:01 p.m. I'm filing a restraining order. You've crossed a line. Ethan deserves better than a father who invents affairs to punish his son for setting boundaries. Ethan 3:52 p.m. Britney showed me texts between her and Coyle. They were just friends. He was helping with the renovation. Dad, why are you doing this? Kyle Kowalski 4:18 p.m. You're going to regret spreading lies about me, old man. I know lawyers too. Defamation, harassment. I'm documenting everything. Ethan 5:03 p.m. Mrs. Miller said you're at the pharmacy. Can I come talk to you? Please, I need to understand what's happening. I deleted nothing, saved everything, took screenshots of each message with timestamps visible. When I walked back inside, Rosa was waiting by the employee room. She'd seen my face. He doesn't believe you, she said quietly. No, I agreed. Not yet. What are you going to do? I looked at my phone, at the 53 messages, at my son choosing his wife's lies over a neighbor's documented evidence. Nothing, I said. I'm going to let him figure it out. Rosa studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded. I finished my shift at 9 p.m., drove back to the duplex in silence. Patricia had left a casserole on my doorstep with a note. Heard you had a rough day. Eat something. Inside, I sat at the small kitchen table. Opened my phone one more time. Ethan 7:41 p.m. Dad. I talked to Gerald Moretti. He showed me his notebook. All the dates, the times, the photos. Oh my God. Oh my God. Dad, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Ethan 8:03 p.m. Britney is saying Gerald doctored the photos. She's saying you paid him to lie. She's saying this is a conspiracy because you're jealous I have someone and you lost Linda. Dad, please tell me that's not true. Ethan 8:34 p.m. I confronted her. She admitted Kyle was here, but said it was only twice, not 52 times. She said, you're exaggerating everything. She said, I have to choose between believing her or believing you. I stared at that last message for a long time. Choose between believing her or believing you. I opened a new message, typed slowly, carefully, read it 3 times before sending. My finger hovered over send for 10 seconds, to decide if I wanted my son back or wanted my dignity more. I pressed send. Walter, 9:45 p.m. Ethan, oh. I have 52 screenshots, 16 times, tamped photos from Gerald Moretti, and an 18-minute recording from eviction night. The lawyer you hired will receive all of it tomorrow. I will not be responding again. I set my phone down, ate Patricia's casserole. It was chicken and rice still warm. I washed my dish dry to put it away. My phone buzzed twice. I ignored it. At 10:30, I brushed my teeth, put on the same flannel pajama pants I had worn for 6 nights, lay down on the futon. Buzz. I picked up my phone one last time. Ethan, 11 p.m. Dad. I filed papers to withdraw the lawsuit. I'm so sorry. Please, can we talk? I read it twice, set the phone on the floor face down. Then it buzzed again. Rosa's text said simply, Michael Navarro will take your case. Pro bono. He wants to meet tomorrow, 9 a.m. Michael Navarro, a family law attorney Rosa's cousin, had recommended specialized in elder financial abuse cases and had a reputation for taking on clients the system had failed. I finally had a lawyer, and Ethan had just handed me every reason to use one. I closed my eyes. Linda's voice was there in the dark. Be smart, not angry. But I didn't know anymore which one was which. I woke up on day 7, hearing Linda's voice as clearly as if she were lying beside me. Don't fight angry Walter, fight smart. The duplex was quiet. Morning light came through the thin curtains falling across the photo of Linda I'd propped on the kitchen counter. Her face in that picture was younger, healthier, taken before the cancer, before everything. I made coffee, checked my phone. Ethan's 11 p.m. message still sat unanswered. Dad. I filed papers to withdraw the lawsuit. I'm so sorry. Please, can we talk? I turned the phone face down. Fight smart. Michael Navarro's office was downtown 10th floor of a building that had seen better decades. The elevator smelled like old carpet and someone's lunch. I arrived at 8:47 a.m., 13 minutes early, because that's what you do when a lawyer agrees to take your case for free. The receptionist offered me coffee. I declined. My hands were already shaking. Michael Navarro was younger than I'd expected, 43 Rosa had said, but he looked closer to 35. Sharp suit, kind eyes, handshake firm, but not aggressive. His office was organized chaos case files, stacked precisely law books, with colored tabs, a photo of 2 kids on his desk. "Mr. Kincaid," he said, gesturing to a chair. "Rosa's told me a lot about you. I've reviewed the documents she sent over the quiet title filing, the eviction recording Gerald Moretti's photographs. I want to start by saying, I'm sorry this happened to you." I nodded, couldn't speak yet. He slid a folder across the desk. "What they did filing a fraudulent quiet title suit while you were grieving, using your wife's death as a cover, that's textbook elder financial abuse. It's not just civil fraud, it's criminal." "Criminal," I repeated. The word felt heavy. "North Carolina takes this seriously," Michael said, "especially when there's clear intent to defraud a vulnerable adult. Your son and his wife fabricated abandonment, forged documents, and attempted to steal property worth," he checked his notes, $347,000. That's felony territory. I looked at Linda's voice in my head. "Fight smart." "What do I have to do?" I asked. "Let me tell you what it feels like to sit across from a lawyer and describe how your own son tried to steal your house. You sound crazy even to yourself." I told Michael everything. The eviction, the 18-minute recording, Britney's affair with Kyle Kowalski, the 52 documented visits, the coordinated messages, the lawsuit withdrawal, Ethan's apology I hadn't answered. Michael took notes, asked clarifying questions, never once looked at me with pity, just professional focus. "We have 2 paths," he said when I finished. "Civil and criminal. Civil, we countersue for fraud, emotional distress, legal costs. We'll win. Criminal, we file a complaint with the police, let the district attorney decide whether to prosecute. That's not something you can take back, Mr. Kincaid. Once we involve law enforcement, your son could face jail time." I thought of Ethan at 6 years old learning to ride a bike, at 12 helping Linda plant roses, at 18 graduating high school while I worked a double shift to afford the cap and gown, at 26 kissing his wife under the porch light after throwing my life onto a lawn. "Both," I said. "We do both." Michael studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay, let's go file a police report." The Charlotte-Mecklenburg police station smelled like institutional disinfectant and bad coffee. Michael guided me to the Financial Crimes Unit's 2nd floor, where Detective Yvonne Wagner met us in a small interview room. Detective Yvonne Wagner, a 15-year veteran of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Financial Crimes Unit, had seen enough elder abuse cases to recognize the pattern before I'd finished my second sentence. "Mr. Kincaid," she said, her voice calm and steady, "I need you to walk me through everything starting with your wife's passing. Take your time." So I did. Again. The grief, the work, the eviction, the recording, the lawsuit, the affair, the evidence. My voice stayed level. My hands stayed in my lap. I sounded like I was describing something that happened to someone else. Detective Wagner typed. As I spoke, her fingers quick on the keyboard. When I mentioned Britney's name, she paused. "Britney Lawson," she said. "Maiden name?" I don't know," I admitted. "She and Ethan have been married 2 years. I never asked." Detective Wagner turned to her computer, typed for 30 seconds, then went very still. "Mr. Kincaid," she said slowly, "your daughter-in-law has priors." The room tilted slightly. "Priors," I repeated. "Identity theft, 2019, Broward County, Florida. Convicted, served 18 months probation. 2 additional fraud cases, 2021, Fulton County, Georgia. Both dismissed on technicalities." She looked up at me. "Your son didn't just pick the wrong partner, Mr. Kincaid. He picked a career criminal. 3 states, 6 years, identity theft, fraud again. Britney Lawson wasn't Ethan's mistake. She was his assignment." "Does Ethan know?" I asked. Detective Wagner's expression softened. "That's a question for your son, not for me. But in my experience, men who marry women like Britney usually don't ask the right questions until it's too late." She printed the criminal record. 3 pages, dates, charges, case numbers, mugshots. In the 2019 photo, Britney looked younger, harder. The smile was the same. I signed the criminal complaint at 12:43 p.m. My signature looked like someone else's handwriting. Michael drove me back to his office, filed the civil countersuit electronically, then called Rosa. "He needs to eat," he told her, "and he shouldn't be alone." Rosa picked me up at 6 p.m., took me to a small restaurant I didn't recognize, ordered food I didn't taste. She didn't ask questions, just sat across from me, steady and present. while I stared at my water glass. "You did the right thing," she said finally. I looked up. "Did I?" "Linda would be proud," Rosa said. "I don't feel proud," I said. My voice cracked slightly. "I feel tired." Rosa reached across the table. Her hand covered mine. "And that's how you know you're doing the right thing," she said. Across the restaurant table, Rosa's hand covered mine, and I realized I'd been shaking for 3 hours straight. We left at 7:30. Rosa drove me back to the duplex, walked me to the door, made sure I had her number saved. "Call me if you need anything," she said. "I mean it, Walter. Anything." I promised I would. Inside, I sat on the futon in the dark, didn't turn on the lights, just sat there holding my phone staring at nothing. Then the phone lit up. Unknown number, area code 561. I almost didn't answer, but something Linda's voice maybe, or just exhaustion made me press the green button. The voicemail came through a moment later. A woman's voice strained and urgent. "Mr. Kincaid, my name is Diane Lawson. I'm Britney's mother. We need to talk about what she's done to you and to my family." I played it 3 times. Diane Lawson, Britney's mother, calling from West Palm Beach with a strained, urgent voice, would turn out to be the witness I didn't know I needed. I saved the voicemail. Texted Rosa, Britney's mother, "Just called, says we need to talk." Her response came in seconds. "I'm coming over." I set the phone down, closed my eyes. Linda's voice was there again, soft and sure. "You're fighting smart, Walter. Keep going." On day 8, Dr. Miller pulled me aside at the pharmacy and said, "Walter, I've had 17 customers ask about you this morning. The whole neighborhood knows what your son did, and they're furious." I was restocking blood pressure medications when he found me. Friday morning, 9:23 a.m., the pharmacy already busy with the post-work week crowd. Doctor. Miller's face was concerned, but proud like a father whose son had finally stood up to a bully. 17 customers. "Walter, Mrs. Higgins from the dry cleaner, said if she sees your son, she'll give him a piece of her mind. The neighborhood is on your side." I nodded, kept stocking. What was I supposed to say? "Thank you for caring that my son tried to steal my house." The call started around lunchtime. Gerald Moretti checking in. Rosa during her break. 2 neighbors I hadn't spoken to since Linda's funeral, both expressing outrage, both offering to testify if needed. By 3 p.m., my phone had 12 missed calls. The Dilworth neighborhood had always been close-knit, the kind of place where people knew your name and waved from porches. Linda had loved that. She'd baked cookies for block parties, organized the annual yard sale, brought Gerald his sweet tea every Sunday. For 30 years, we'd been part of the fabric. Now that fabric was wrapping around me like armor I hadn't asked for. Saturday morning, my doorbell rang at 8:47 a.m. I opened the door to find 7 women on my porch, ages ranging from 35 to 78. Every single one holding a casserole dish and wearing an expression that said, "We're not taking no for an answer." The Dilworth neighbors, 7 women ranging from 35 to 78. All carrying casseroles and righteous indignation, had watched Walter and Linda build their life for decades and refused to stay silent when it was stolen. Patricia Russo stood at the front, her silver hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. "Baby," she said, "we've been watching Linda's house for 30 years. We know who built that home, and it wasn't those 2 thieves. They didn't wait for permission. They walked and set casseroles on my counter. Chicken green bean, casserole macaroni, and cheese cornbread, 2 lasagnas, and something that smelled like heaven wrapped in foil. Then they started cleaning. One woman, whose name I learned was Denise, brought cleaning supplies and fresh curtains. Another, Margaret, had a box of kitchen utensils and dish towels. Patricia carried in a lamp from her own living room. "You need light in here," she said, simply plugging it in beside the futon. I stood in the middle of the duplex, surrounded by the casserole brigade, and felt something crack open in my chest. Not sadness, gratitude so overwhelming it hurt. Here's what nobody tells you about becoming a community, because you stop being a person and become a symbol. And symbols don't get to be complicated or sad. They stayed for 2 hours, fed me lunch, asked about the legal case with genuine interest and appropriate anger, hugged me when they left. Patricia was the last one out. "You're coming to church tomorrow," she said, not a question. "Patricia, I haven't been to church since..." "Tomorrow," she repeated. 10 a.m. I'll pick you up at 9:45. That night alone in the duplex, surrounded by casserole dishes, my phone buzzed. Ethan, I didn't open it. 15 messages from Ethan, Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night. Sunday dawn, Sunday noon, all unanswered. Sunday morning, Patricia arrived in a powder blue Cadillac that smelled like lavender and determination. I wore the one button-down shirt I'd salvaged from the eviction, pressed with an iron Patricia had brought yesterday. Mount Zion Baptist Church was a modest brick building on the east side of Dilworth, surrounded by oak trees older than I was. The parking lot was already half full when we arrived at 9:52 a.m. The Mount Zion Baptist congregation, a 70-member community church Patricia had attended for 40 years, treated Walter like a returning prodigal son, despite him never having attended before, offering everything from job connections to a legal defense fund. Inside the sanctuary smelled like wood polish and perfume. Sunlight came through stained glass windows, painting the pews in blues and golds. An organ played softly. People smiled at me, shook my hand, told me they'd been praying. Patricia guided me to a pew near the front, sat beside me like a bodyguard. The service started at 10:03. I won't pretend I remember the sermon, something about Job and suffering and God's faithfulness. What I remember is the feeling of being surrounded by people who didn't know me but had decided I was worth caring about anyway. After the service, at least 20 people approached me. A man named Marcus, who owned a construction company, said he was hiring if I needed extra work. A woman named Evelyn pressed a check for $200 into my hand for my legal fund. I tried to refuse, she wouldn't hear it. A teenager named Jasmine said her grandmother had been scammed by a family member, and my story gave her hope for justice. I stood there holding Evelyn's check, surrounded by strangers, offering kindness, and thought, this is what Ethan destroyed. Not just a house, a community, a reputation. 30 years of being known as a good man. Patricia drove me home at noon. I thanked her. She squeezed my hand. Linda would be proud of you, she said. I wasn't sure that was true. Sunday afternoon blurred into evening. I reheated one of the casseroles, ate mechanically, checked my phone. Another message from Ethan, 4:17 p.m. Dad, please. I know I don't deserve anything, but please just tell me you're okay. I set the phone face down. At 9:30 p.m., I sat on the futon in the lamplight Patricia had brought, pulled out Linda's photo, the one from Lake Norman 2015 before the cancer. Her smile was bright and real, and I could almost hear her laugh. I'm winning, honey, I said out loud to the empty duplex, but it feels hollow. Our son, I don't know if we'll ever fix this. The tears came without warning, 10 days of holding everything together, and Linda's photographed smile finally broke me. I cried for the first time since September 23rd. Not the silent tears of shock, but deep body-shaking sobs that left me gasping. I cried for Linda, for Ethan, for the family we'd been, for the man I used to be, who believed love was enough to keep people good. I cried until I was empty. Then I wiped my face, set Linda's photo on the counter where I could see her, went to bed. Monday morning, I woke to find my phone flooded again, but not from Ethan. Detective Wagner had left a voicemail at 6:47 a.m. Mr. Kincaid, we need you to come to the station immediately. Britney Lawson was arrested last night trying to board a flight to Costa Rica. There's been a development you need to hear in person. At 9 a.m. on day 11, someone knocked on my duplex door, and when I opened it, my son stood on the porch looking like he'd aged a decade in 11 days. Ethan was gaunt, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes like bruises. His hands were shaking. He wore the same jacket he'd worn the night of the eviction, but it hung differently now, like he'd lost weight, or lost something heavier than weight. Dad, he said. His voice cracked on the single syllable. I stood in the doorway, didn't open the screen door, just looked at him through the wire mesh that separated us. What do you want, Ethan? Not a question, a statement. He flinched, swallowed hard. I needed to see you, to tell you. You shouldn't be here, I said. I know. He looked down at his feet. I know I have no right, but Dad, please, just 5 minutes. I almost said no, almost closed the door, but something in his face, the complete destruction of the confident young man who'd kissed his wife under the porch light, made me hesitate. 5 minutes, I said, and I'm not opening this door. Ethan nodded. Okay. He looked past me into the duplex, saw the bare walls, the futon, the casserole dishes on the counter. His face crumpled. God, Dad, what did I do to you? I said nothing, waited. Ethan took a shaking breath. Britney was arrested Saturday night, at the airport. She was trying to fly to Costa Rica with $47,000 in cash and a fake passport. Did you know that? I didn't, I said quietly, but I'm not surprised. I didn't know about the affair, Ethan said. His voice was raw. I swear to God, Dad, I didn't know. Not until Gerald Moretti showed me the photos. 52 times, in Mom's bed. while I was at work. The screen door between us was 3 feet of wire mesh, but it felt like the distance between planets close enough to see everything too far to reach. I'm sorry doesn't cover it, Ethan continued. I know that. There's no word big enough for what I did to you, but I need you to understand why. Why, I repeated. My voice was cold. You're going to explain why you threw me out of my own house 3 months after burying your mother. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. Not in anger, in anguish. I blamed you for surviving her dad. The words hung in the October air between us. Mom died and you were still here, Ethan said, tears streaming down his face now. And I hated that. I hated that she was gone and you got to keep living. You got to go to work and come home and wake up every morning, like the world hadn't ended, and I wanted you to hurt like I was hurting. Let me tell you what it's like to see your child broken by consequences. You enforced every instinct screams to fix it, and every ounce of self-preservation screams to run. So, you married a con artist, I said quietly, and decided to steal my house. Britney saw what I was feeling, Ethan said. She saw the rage and the grief, and she used it. She kept saying you were holding me back, that you were a burden, that Mom would want us to have the house to start fresh. She made it sound like mercy, and you believed her. I chose to believe her, Ethan corrected. That's the difference, Dad. She manipulated me, but I chose the cruelty. I chose to film you crying. I chose to file that lawsuit. I chose to let her erase Mom from every room. His voice broke completely on that last word. I gripped the screen door handle. My knuckles were white. What do you want from me, Ethan? I'll testify against her, he said immediately. I'll tell them everything, the affair, the fraud, the fake passport, all of it. The DA called me yesterday. They're offering me immunity if I cooperate. I'll do it. I'll make sure she pays for what she did. To me, I said. What she did to me. Ethan looked up, met my eyes through the screen. To both of us, he said softly, I wanted to open the door. Every cell in my body that remembered teaching him to ride a bike, to throw a baseball, to change a tire, every memory of the boy he'd been before Britney, before grief. Before cruelty wanted to unlatch that screen and pull him inside and say, we'll fix this. But Linda's voice was there. Fight smart, Walter. Not angry, smart. Take the immunity deal, I said. Testify. Make sure she never does this to another family. Ethan's face lit up with hope. And then, can we fix this? Please, Dad. I'll do anything. I'll go to therapy. I'll make amends. Don't call me, I said. The hope died. Don't text me. Don't show up here. Don't ask Rosa or Dr. Miller or anyone else to check on me for you. Dad, in 1 year, I continued, my voice steady and firm. October 4th, 2026. You can call me. You can ask me that question again. Maybe by then, I'll know the answer. But right now, Ethan, I don't. When I said ask me in a year, Ethan's face crumpled like I'd struck him, and some part of me, the father part Linda had built, wanted to take it back. A year, Ethan whispered. A year, I confirmed. You need to learn that apologies don't erase consequences. That saying you're sorry doesn't mean I have to forgive you. That love doesn't mean I have to let you hurt me again. Ethan was crying openly now. Will that ever happen? Will you ever? I don't know, I said. Ask me in a year. We stood there for a long moment, father and son, 3 feet of wire mesh between us, everything broken, nothing resolved. Okay, Ethan finally said. Okay, 1 year. He turned to leave, stopped, looked back. For what it's worth, he said, his voice barely audible. Mom would be proud of you, for surviving, for fighting back, for not letting me destroy you. I hope so, I said quietly. Ethan walked to his car, got in, drove away down Euclid Avenue without looking back. I stood at the screen door until his taillights disappeared. Then I noticed movement across the yard. Patricia Russo stood at her window, silhouette backlit by her living room lamp. She'd been watching the whole time, protective, ready to intervene if needed. I raised one hand. She raised hers back. Then her curtain closed. I went inside, sat on the futon, stared at nothing. My phone buzzed. Michael Navarro, Walter Good News. DA wants to meet. They're offering Ethan immunity if he testifies against Britney for multiple fraud charges. But there's something about the Costa Rica arrest you need to know. Can you come to my office at 2 p.m.? I stared at the text. Multiple fraud charges. Something about the arrest. Whatever Britney had been running from was bigger than I'd imagined. I walked into courtroom 12B of the Mecklenburg County Courthouse on day 12, wearing a $47 suit from Goodwill. And when Judge Constance Mboya asked Mr. Kincaid, "Are you ready to proceed?" I realized I'd been ready since the night my son threw my life on the lawn. The courtroom smelled like old wood and institutional air conditioning. Judge Constance Mboya, a 22-year veteran of Mecklenburg County Civil Court, known for her sharp questioning and zero tolerance for fraud, looked at me over her reading glasses with an expression that said she'd seen this exact case too many times before. Michael Navarro sat beside me at the plaintiff's table, his case files organized with military precision. Across the aisle, Britney Lawson wore a navy dress and a performance of innocence that would have been convincing if I didn't know what she'd done in Linda's bedroom 52 times. The gallery behind me held Rosa Dr. Miller, Patricia Russo, and Gerald Moretti, my people, the ones who'd shown up. And in the back row alone sat Ethan. I hadn't expected that. Our eyes met for half a second before I looked away. Judge Mboya reviewed the case summary. "Mr. Navarro, you may proceed." Michael stood. "Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of elder financial abuse disguised as a property dispute. Mr. Walter Kincaid, 58, lost his wife Linda to cancer on June 18, 2025. 3 months later, while grieving, he was illegally evicted by his son, Ethan Kincaid, and daughter-in-law, Britney Lawson. They then filed a fraudulent quiet title lawsuit, claiming abandonment to steal a property worth $347,000. He laid out the evidence methodically, the 18-minute recording of the eviction, Gerald Moretti's 52 time-stamped photographs documenting Britney's affair with contractor Kyle Kowalski, Britney's criminal history identity theft fraud, charges across 3 states, the coordinated text messages pressuring me to sign away my rights. Britney's attorney, a young man who looked uncomfortable with his client, tried to argue the eviction was a family matter, not criminal. Judge Mboya cut him off. Counselor fraud doesn't become legal just because it's committed by relatives. Then Michael called Ethan to the stand. "Here's what you need to know about watching your son testify on your behalf. In court, it should feel like victory, but mostly it feels like watching him confess at a funeral." Ethan looked pale as he was sworn in. He wouldn't look at Britney, wouldn't look at me either, just stared at his hands. "Mr. Kincaid," Michael said gently, "can you tell the court about the events of September 23, 2025? Ethan's voice was quiet. "I evicted my father from his home, the home he'd lived in for 30 years, the home where my mother died 3 months earlier." "And was your father given proper notice?" "No." "Did your father abandon the property as your lawsuit claimed?" "No, he was at work, at the pharmacy where he'd worked for 26 years. I knew his schedule. I chose that day because he wouldn't be there to stop me." The courtroom was silent. "Mr. Kincaid, why did you file the quiet title lawsuit?" Ethan finally looked up, met the judge's eyes. "The lawsuit was a lie. My father never abandoned the property. I evicted him while he was grieving my mother, and Britney convinced me we could claim the house. I was wrong. He's the rightful owner." Britney made a sound like a wounded animal. Her attorney touched her arm. She shook him off. Michael continued. "Were you aware of your wife's affair with Kyle Kowalski?" "No, not until last week when Mr. Gerald Moretti showed me the evidence. 52 visits in my mother's bed, while I was at work." Michael nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Kincaid." Britney's attorney tried cross-examination but had nothing. Ethan's testimony was too clear, too self-condemning. Judge Mboya called a 15-minute recess. I sat at the table not moving. Rosa squeezed my shoulder as she passed. Dr. Miller nodded at me. Patricia whispered, "Almost done, baby." When court resumed, Britney took the stand. It was a mistake. Under questioning, she became defensive hostile, her mask slipping, to reveal the woman who'd kissed my son under the porch light after destroying my life. "Mr. Kincaid was a burden," she said. "He was holding Ethan back. We needed a fresh start. In a house you didn't own," Judge Mboya said. "We were his family, and he was yours," the judge interrupted. "Yet you documented his eviction on video. You filed false legal claims. You conducted an extramarital affair in his late wife's bedroom. Ms. Lawson, nothing you've said supports your case." 47 minutes. That's how long it took Judge Mboya to undo everything Ethan and Britney had tried to steal. The judge's ruling was swift and surgical. "I find the plaintiff's case fraudulent and malicious. Mr. Walter Kincaid is declared sole owner of 1847 Mimosa Avenue, Ms. Britney Lawson is hereby restrained from contact or proximity to Mr. Kincaid or the property. I'm referring criminal fraud charges to the district attorney. This court is adjourned." The gavel came down. Rosa hugged me. Dr. Miller shook my hand. Patricia was crying. Gerald patted my back and said, Linda would be so proud. Michael gathered his files. You won, Walter. Clean victory. I nodded. Didn't feel like victory. Felt like standing in the ruins of something that used to be a family. Outside on the courthouse steps, 3 local reporters waited. 3 local reporters, 2 from Charlotte Observer, 1 from WCNC waited on the courthouse steps with cameras and notepads. Having caught wind of the elder abuse case that involved affair photos and a fraudulent lawsuit. Mr. Kincaid, can we get a statement? I looked at Michael. He nodded. I stepped forward, kept it brief. I want my son to heal. I want my home back. I want to grieve my wife in peace. That's all. The reporters shouted follow-up questions. I turned away. That's when I saw him. Ethan stood at the edge of the crowd, maybe 30 feet away, tears streaming down his face, not moving, just watching. Our eyes met. Across 30 feet of courthouse crowd, my son and I looked at each other, him crying me empty, and we each nodded, once a promise and a wound and a maybe all without speaking. I nodded once, slow, deliberate. Ethan nodded back. No words, no movement toward each other, just that single acknowledgement. 1 year, I'd said. October 4th, 2026. That nod was the down payment on a debt neither of us knew if we could afford. Then Rosa touched my elbow. Walter, she said quietly, you need to see this. She held up her phone. The screen showed a TikTok video already at 2.3 million views. Someone had filmed my courthouse statement, my brief exhausted words, and in the background clearly visible was Ethan crying. The caption read, Father sets boundary with son who tried to steal his house. This is how you fight with dignity. The comments were flooded, thousands of them. People sharing their own stories of family betrayal. Parents who'd been scammed by children. Siblings who'd stolen inheritances. Strangers thanking me for showing them it was possible to survive. I stared at the screen. Walter Rosa said this went viral. People are seeing this everywhere. I looked up. Past Rosa, past the reporters, past the courthouse. Ethan was gone. I handed Rosa her phone back. Let's go home, I said. Home. The word felt strange, foreign, like trying on clothes that used to fit. But I said it anyway. Because in 47 minutes, Judge Mboya had given me back the house on Mimosa Avenue. Now, I had to figure out how to make it home again. 13 days after my son threw my life on the lawn, I stood on the porch of 1847 Mimosa Avenue holding a new set of keys, and the house that had been mine for 30 years suddenly felt like a crime scene I was being asked to investigate. The keys were unfamiliar, new locks courtesy of Judge Mboya's order. The house looked the same, from the outside white siding, Linda's blue shutters. The porch swing we'd hung in 2003, but something was wrong. I could feel it before I even turned the key. Inside, the air smelled different. Not Linda's vanilla candles or her lavender sachets. Something sharper, foreign. I walked through the living room first. The furniture was mine, but the arrangement was wrong. The couch faced the wrong direction. Linda's reading chair was gone. I found it later in the garage, one leg broken. The photos on the mantel had been replaced with ones of Ethan and Britney. I took them down, placed them face down on the coffee table. The kitchen was worse. Linda's recipe box, the wooden one her mother had given her in 1987, filled with handwritten cards in her careful cursive, was on the floor, under the table, where someone had kicked it and left it. I knelt down, picked it up. Dust covered the lid. Let me tell you what it's like to walk through your own house after someone else has lived in it. Every room is both familiar and violated, like coming home to find a stranger wearing your dead wife's clothes. I carried the recipe box to the counter, opened it. Most of the cards were still there, pot roast chocolate chip cookies, her mother's cornbread, but some were missing. The ones she'd marked with stars, her favorites. I closed the box, kept moving. The master bedroom was where I found the real damage. Linda's vanity sat against the far wall under the window, where morning light used to catch her perfume bottles like stained glass. For 30 years, that vanity had held her jewelry box from our anniversary, her mother's pearl necklace, 7 different perfume bottles she'd rotate depending on her mood, and the small framed photo of us from our wedding day. All of it was gone. The vanity top was completely bare, wiped clean, like Linda had never existed. I ran my fingers across the wood, felt the faint circles where her perfume bottles had stood for 3 decades. Dust outlined each one. They'd been there so long, they'd left permanent marks. But the bottles themselves were gone. I checked the drawers, empty. The closet. Linda's clothes were missing. I found them later in the garage, black trash bags lined up against the wall, her dresses and sweaters stuffed inside like garbage waiting for pickup. They cleared her vanity. 30 years of her perfume bottles, her jewelry box from our anniversary gone. Like she was never here. I stood in the bedroom for a long time, staring at that empty vanity, at the ghost circles where Linda's things used to be. Britney hadn't just lived in this house. She'd erased Linda from it, systematically, deliberately, room by room. The eviction wasn't about stealing property. It was about replacing my wife with someone younger, newer, more convenient. It was about Britney stepping into Linda's space and pretending the 30 years before her didn't matter. I left the bedroom. Couldn't stay in there. At 2 p.m., there was a knock at the door. The police escort officer, a young woman in her late 20s, who kept her hand near her radio, and her eyes on both men throughout the hour, had clearly overseen restraining order retrievals before and knew exactly how much distance 20 feet was. "Mr. Kincaid," she said, "per the restraining order, your son has 1 hour to collect his belongings. Please maintain a 20-foot distance. He's not permitted to speak to you." I nodded, stepped back. Ethan came in behind her. He looked worse than he had at the courthouse. Thinner, grayer, like something vital had been drained out. He didn't look at me. Went straight to the spare bedroom where he'd apparently been living. Started carrying boxes out to his car. I stood in the living room doorway, exactly 20 feet away, watching. It took him 43 minutes to load everything. Clothes, books, a laptop, 2 duffel bags. Not much for a life. The officer stood between us the entire time, professional, detached. Ethan made his last trip, paused in the doorway. I thought he might turn around, might try to say something despite the order. But he didn't. He just left. The officer followed. "Mr. Kincaid, you're clear. Call if there are any violations." Then I was alone. I walked back through the house. Every room felt emptier now. Not because Ethan had taken his things, because I'd watched him leave and felt nothing except tired. In the kitchen, I found the note. It was on the counter, folded once, my name written on the outside in Ethan's handwriting. I recognized it immediately, the same print he'd used on Father's Day cards when he was 8. I picked it up, unfolded it. "I'm sorry, not enough. That was it. 7 words, 3 sentences. I read it 3 times, stood there holding it until the evening light came through the kitchen window and turned everything gold. The kitchen drawer closed on Ethan's note with a soft click, not a door slamming, not a door opening, just a drawer holding something I wasn't ready to decide about yet. Not ready to throw it away, not ready to answer it either. Just holding it for later, for when I knew what later meant. That night, I sat at Linda's kitchen table, the one we'd bought at a yard sale in 1997, and refinished together over a weekend and opened my laptop. The email icon showed 847 unread messages. I stared at the number, all from the viral video Rosa had shown me outside the courthouse. The subject line scrolled past as I opened the inbox. "My daughter did this to me. Thank you for showing me I'm not alone. How did you survive it? You saved my life today. Please read this. I need help." I clicked on one at random. Sender Margaret Thompson, Perth, Australia. Subject, "Thank you. Mr. Kincaid. I'm a 62-year-old woman in Perth, Australia, and my son stole my house 3 years ago. I've been staying with my sister, too ashamed to tell anyone what happened, too broken to fight back. Tonight, I watched your courthouse video, watched you set that boundary with your son, watched you stand there with dignity, even though you were clearly devastated and something in me unlocked. Watching you set that boundary saved my life tonight. I called a lawyer this morning. I'm filing papers tomorrow. Thank you for showing me it's possible to survive this. With gratitude, Margaret." I sat back in the chair. Linda's recipe box sat on the counter where I'd left it. Ethan's note was in the drawer. My house was mine again legally, but it felt like someone else's crime scene. And 846 more emails waited. From strangers who'd seen my worst day and called it hope. At 8 a.m. on day 14, Rosa knocked on my door with cleaning supplies, doctor. Miller arrived with groceries, and Patricia showed up with gardening tools. And I realized my community wasn't going to let me reclaim this house alone. They didn't ask permission, just walked in like they owned the place more than I did. Rosa headed straight for the master bedroom. Doctor, Miller unpacked groceries in the kitchen, real food, not just casseroles. And Patricia went out back to assess the rose garden Linda had babied for 20 years. I stood in the living room, holding a cup of coffee I'd made in my own kitchen for the first time in 2 weeks, watching these 3 people restore what Britney had tried to erase. "Where do you want Linda's photos?" Rosa called from the bedroom. "Same places they were before," I said. "You remember?" "I remember. She did. Every single one went back exactly where Linda had hung them. The wedding photo over the mantel, the Lake Norman picture in the hallway. The one of Ethan as a baby, I almost told her to leave that one down, but didn't. He was still my son. Just not yet. Dr. Miller made lunch, real lunch, sandwiches and fruit and chips, not grief food. We ate at Linda's kitchen table, while Patricia reported on the rose garden's condition. They're struggling, she said, but they'll come back. Linda babied these roses for 20 years. They're tough. They'll come back just like you. I wasn't sure I believed her about me, but I believed her about the roses. Here's what you need to know. About reclaiming a violated home, you can't do it alone. And the people who show up with cleaning supplies love you more than the people who lived there rent-free. After lunch, I went to work on Linda's vanity. Rosa had cleaned the surface, but the drawers still needed sorting. Most were empty. Britney had taken or thrown away everything, but the back compartment had a false bottom Linda had installed years ago. I'd forgotten about it. I pressed the corner like Linda had shown me once, and the panel popped open. Inside was her wedding ring. Gold, simple, small enough to fit in my palm. The inscription was still clear. Forever W. She'd stopped wearing it during chemo when her hands swelled. Put it here for safekeeping. I'd forgotten. In all the chaos of her dying, and then the eviction, I'd completely forgotten. Rosa appeared in the doorway. Walter. I held up the ring, her wedding ring. She hid it here during chemo when her hands swelled. I forgot she did that. Rosa came over, put her hand on my shoulder. She wanted you to find it when you were ready. I closed my fist around it, felt the metal warm against my skin. Then I found a chain in my own drawer, one I'd worn in my 20s, long forgotten, and threaded Linda's ring onto it. Put it around my neck. She's with you, Rosa said quietly. I nodded, couldn't speak. That evening after Rosa and Dr. Miller left, I found Patricia still in the backyard with the roses. She'd pruned all the dead wood, water deeply mulched around the bases. They'll show new growth in a week, she said. Maybe 2. You just have to be patient. I'm learning, I said. Gerald Moretti showed up at 7 p.m. with a casserole, stood on my porch like he had every right to be there. Welcome back, neighbor, he said, handing me the dish. Linda's house has its rightful owner again. Thank you, I said, for everything. The photos, the testimony, all of it. He waved it off. You'd have done the same. I wasn't sure that was true, but I thanked him anyway. The next week blurred into routine. I went back to work at Miller's Pharmacy on day 15, Monday, October 8th. The pharmacy customers, many of whom Walter had served for decades, greeted his return with warmth casseroles and their own stories of family betrayal, creating an unexpected support network of people who understood. Mrs. Higgins from the dry cleaner brought cookies, said she was saving them for when justice was served. Mr. Dalton asked if I needed anything, said his daughter had tried something similar with his lake house. 3 different customers told me they had seen the viral video, and it had helped them set boundaries with their own families. I worked my shifts, came home, tended the roses morning and evening. By day 17, I could see new buds, tiny green shoots where Patricia had cut away the dead branches. The roses were coming back. Maybe I was too. I developed a ritual, morning coffee on the back porch checking the roses for progress, evening walk through the garden before dark talking to Linda like she could hear me. The roses are coming back, honey, I said on day 18. New buds already. Maybe I am too. The house slowly stopped feeling like a crime scene. Linda's photos were back. Her recipe box sat cleaned and displayed on the kitchen counter. Her wedding ring hung around my neck, warm against my chest. I wasn't erasing Britney's violation, but I was honoring Linda's memory louder than Britney had dishonored it. On day 20, October 13th week, 3, I checked the mailbox like I did every day. Bills, pharmacy newsletter, a thick catalog, and one envelope with handwriting I recognized. Return address Ethan Kincaid, Richmond, Virginia. Richmond. He'd left Charlotte, left the state. I stood at the mailbox holding the letter. The sun was setting. The October air was cool. Down the street, Patricia was watering her own garden and pretended not to watch me. The letter sat in my hand like Schrodinger's cat, as long as I didn't open it. Ethan's words could be anything. Apology, excuse, plea. Goodbye. I walked back to the house, set the letter on the kitchen counter next to the drawer that held his note from day 13. 2 messages, both unopened, both waiting. I made dinner, ate, cleaned up. The letter sat there the whole time. At 8:30 p.m., Rosa called. Walter, she said without preamble, you need to see the news. Channel 9 is doing a story on elder financial abuse. They're using your case as the lead example, and they want to interview you tomorrow at 10 a.m. They're calling it an epidemic. I looked at the letter on my counter, at Linda's recipe box, at the life I was slowly, carefully rebuilding, an interview I repeated. They want to talk about setting boundaries, about fighting back, about the viral video and how many people have reached out to you. Walter, you could help a lot of people. Or I could keep my head down and heal in private. You could, Rosa agreed. It's your choice. But they're coming tomorrow at 10 a.m. if you say yes. I told them I'd ask. I hung up, looked around my kitchen, Linda's kitchen, our kitchen. My private pain was about to become a very public platform, and I had less than 24 hours to decide if I was ready. The letter from Ethan sat unopened. The roses were growing new buds. And somewhere 847 strangers were waiting to see if the man from the viral video would help them find the courage he'd barely found himself. I touched Linda's ring through my shirt. What would you do, honey? But I already knew the answer. Linda had never been afraid of helping people, even when it cost her something. I picked up my phone, texted Rosa. Tell them yes, 10 a.m. tomorrow. Then I looked at Ethan's letter one more time. But that could wait. For 3 days, Ethan's unopened letter sat on my kitchen counter like a bomb. I wasn't ready to defuse until day 24, when Rosa walked into my house, picked it up and said, "Walter, you're allowed to read it without forgiving him." I'd circled that letter for 72 hours, picked it up, set it down, made coffee and stared at it, made dinner and avoided looking at it, went to bed wondering what it said, woke up afraid to find out. The envelope was worn now from my handling. The return address, Ethan Kincaid, Richmond, Virginia, mocked me every time I passed the counter. Gerald had stopped by day 21 with news. Britney got arrested yesterday. Fraud charges. Kyle Kowalski's already moved out. Posted on Facebook he was deceived. Rats leaving the sinking ship. I'd felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, just empty. Dr. Miller mentioned the next day at the pharmacy that he'd heard Ethan was in Richmond. Checked into some kind of treatment program. At least he's respecting your boundary, no calls, no showing up. That had surprised me. Ethan was following the rules, staying away. The letter was the only contact, and even that felt careful, respectful, like he was testing whether I'd even open it. For 3 days I didn't. Here's what you need to understand about avoiding a letter from someone who hurt you every hour. You don't open it. You imagine 1,000 versions, some worse than reality, some better, all exhausting. What if it was manipulative? What if it was genuine? What if it made me want to break my boundary? What if it made me realize I never wanted to speak to him again? By day 23, I was obsessing. The letter sat there, and I couldn't think about anything else. Then Rosa showed up on day 24. She didn't knock, just walked in like she owned the place, which, given how much she'd helped me reclaim it, maybe she did a little. She went straight to the counter, picked up the letter, held it out to me. "Walter, you're allowed to read it without forgiving him. Reading isn't reconciliation. It's just information. I don't know if I want the information," I said. "Yes, you do. You've been staring at this thing for 3 days. You're torturing yourself with what ifs. Just open it. If it's garbage, throw it away. If it's not, deal with it then." She was right. I hated that she was right. I took the letter, sat down at Linda's kitchen table. Rosa sat across from me, silent support. I tore open the envelope. 3 pages, handwritten. Ethan's familiar print, the same careful letters he'd used since elementary school. When I started reading, "Dad, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking you to contact me. I'm writing this because my therapist says I need to take accountability without expecting anything in return. So, here it is. I blamed you for surviving Mom. That's the truth therapy helped me see. She died, and you were still here going to work, coming home existing, like the world hadn't ended. I hated you for that. Not because you did anything wrong, because you kept living when she couldn't. Britney saw that rage and used it. She'd say things like, 'Your dad's holding you back,' or 'Linda would want you to have the house,' or 'He's grieving wrong.' She turned my anger into a weapon. But here's what I'm learning. She didn't make me cruel. I chose that. I chose to film you crying. I chose to file that lawsuit. I chose to let her erase Mom from every room. I'm 90 days sober now. I didn't tell you I had a problem with alcohol because I didn't want to admit it to myself. But I was drinking every day after Mom died, sometimes starting at noon, always finishing after midnight. Britney encouraged it, said I deserved to relax. Therapy's showing me she was isolating me, making me dependent, setting me up for the fraud. But I let her. Every single time I let her. I'm in Richmond doing intensive therapy and a sobriety program. I won't contact you until October 4th, 2026 like you asked. You owe me nothing, Dad. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, not even this letter getting read. I just needed you to know I'm doing the work, whether you're there at the end of it or not. I'm sorry doesn't cover what I did, but I'm sorry anyway. Ethan, I read it twice, then a third time. 90 days sober, 3 pages handwritten, 0 requests for contact. My son was doing the work whether I forgave him or not. Rosa sat quietly across from me waiting. He's in therapy, I said finally, and sober, 90 days. That's good, Rosa said softly. That's really good, Walter. He's not asking me to forgive him. No, he's not. I folded the letter, looked at Linda's photo on the counter, the Lake Norman picture from 2015 before the cancer. Can't forgive him yet, honey, I said to her. But I don't hate him anymore either. Is that progress? The tears came again, quieter than the first time, less like breaking, and more like letting go of something I'd been holding too tightly. Rosa reached across the table, squeezed my hand. That's progress, she said. I wiped my face, opened the kitchen drawer where I'd placed his first note. I'm sorry, not enough. And added the 3-page letter beside it. 2 pieces of my son's remorse. Not enough to erase what he'd done, but enough to show he was trying. I closed the drawer. Rosa stayed for another hour. We didn't talk about the letter, just sat there drinking coffee, comfortable in the silence. After she left, I made dinner, tended the rose bushes, new buds everywhere, now green and promising. Came back inside as the October evening turned dark. I was washing dishes when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Is this Walter Kincaid? Yes. Mr. Kincaid, this is Jessica Gallagher from Atlantic Coast Living magazine. Jessica Gallagher, a senior writer for Atlantic Coast Living magazine, with a calm, empathetic voice. Specialized in human interest stories about resilience and had been following Walter's viral courthouse moment for 2 weeks. I'm calling because we're doing a feature story on family resilience after betrayal, she continued. Your courthouse video has inspired thousands of people, the boundary you set, the dignity you showed. We'd love to interview you for our November issue. We pay $2,500 for the interview and photo shoot. I looked around my kitchen, at Linda's recipe box on the counter, at her photo, at the drawer holding Ethan's letters, at the house I'd fought to reclaim. $2,500. That was a month and a half of pharmacy paychecks. That was breathing room. That was security. But it was also my private pain on display, my son's worst moment, Linda's memory packaged for strangers to consume. Mr. Kincaid, Jessica said, I know this is a lot to consider. You don't have to decide right now, but I want you to know 3 people reached out to us after seeing your video. They said watching you set that boundary saved their lives. Literally. They were planning to give up, and you showed them it was possible to survive. I touched Linda's ring through my shirt, felt the metal warm against my chest. What would you do, honey? But I already knew. Linda had never been afraid of helping people, even when it cost her something. Ms. Gallagher, I said slowly, can I ask what the interview would involve? We'd come to your home, she said. Take photos in the house, the garden, wherever feels right to you. Ask about your marriage, the eviction, how you survived, what you'd tell others facing similar betrayals. It would be about 2 hours. The story would run in our November issue, reach about 400,000 readers. 400,000 people. I looked at Linda's photo again, the letter in the drawer, the roses growing outside. Okay, I said, let's do it. When Jessica Gallagher knocked on my door on day 26 with a camera notebook and kind smile, my first thought was, why would anyone care about a 58-year-old pharmacy tech who got his house back? She stood on my porch, the same porch where Ethan had stood 12 days ago, gaunt and apologizing. But Jessica's presence felt different, purposeful rather than painful. Mr. Kincaid, she said, thank you for agreeing to this. I'm still not sure why you'd want to, I said honestly. I'm just a pharmacy tech who got evicted and fought back. There are probably thousands of stories like mine. Jessica tilted her head slightly. Mr. Kincaid, you set a boundary with your own son. That's the hardest thing a parent can do, and thousands of people need to see it's possible. I let her in. For the next 2 hours, I told my story. Jessica asked questions gently but directly about Linda, about our 30 years together, about the eviction night, about discovering Britney's affair, about the lawsuit, about setting the 1-year boundary with Ethan. She photographed me in the rose garden. Linda's wedding ring was visible on the chain around my neck. The ring around your neck, Jessica said softly. Can you tell me about that? My wife Linda's wedding ring, I said. She hid it during chemo and her hands swelled. I found it after I got the house back. It reminds me what I was fighting for. Jessica wrote that down carefully. Let me tell you what it's like to have your worst moment published in a magazine, terrifying and liberating at once. Like standing naked in public, but realizing no one's pointing and laughing, they're nodding in recognition. After photographing me, Jessica interviewed Rosa at the pharmacy, then Dr. Miller, then Gerald Moretti, finally Patricia Russo at Mount Zion Baptist. When she came back that evening to review, she read me Rosa's quote, "Walter didn't seek revenge, he sought survival. There's a difference, and elder abuse victims need to know they're allowed to choose themselves." I sat there holding the words in my mind. Survival, not revenge. That's exactly what it had been. But I'd never articulated it that way. Before Jessica left, she handed me an envelope, the $2,500 payment. "This will run in our November issue," she said, "both print and online. We reach about 400,000 readers monthly. I think your story's going to help a lot of people, Mr. Kincaid." "I hope so," I said quietly. "It still feels strange, my worst moment becoming something public." "Your worst moment became your strongest one," Jessica said. "That's the story we're telling." She left. I sat in Linda's kitchen, holding the check for a long time. 2 weeks passed. I worked my shifts at Miller's, tended the roses, responded to a few more emails from the 847 who'd written after the viral video. The house slowly felt less like a battlefield and more like home. On November 2nd day, 40 roughly, the article went live. "Coming Home, One Man's Fight Against Elder Financial Abuse." I read it on my laptop at the kitchen table. Jessica had written it beautifully, focusing not on the betrayal, but on the boundary the community support the choice to survive rather than seek revenge. She'd included photos of me in the rose garden, Linda's ring visible, a quote from Rosa, one from Dr. Miller about dignity. It made me cry, not from pain, from being seen correctly. Within 2 hours, my email pinged 3 times. 3 elder abuse victims reached out after reading Walter's article, transforming his story from personal pain into communal resource. The first message, "Mr. Kincaid, I'm 71, and my daughter emptied my savings account." Reading your story, the part where you said, "Survival, not revenge," gave me permission to file charges. Thank you. The second, "My son forged my name on a reverse mortgage. I've been too ashamed to tell anyone. Your article showed me I'm not alone. Can you recommend a lawyer?" The third, "I'm 63. My nephew stole my mother's house after she died, and I've been homeless for 6 months. Seeing that you got your house back, it gave me hope. What do I do first?" 3 messages, 3 strangers, 3 families broken by the same thing that broke mine. I responded to all 3 with resources: Michael Navarro's contact information, Detective Wagner's financial crimes unit, links to elder abuse support groups. The same help I'd received passed forward. That afternoon, Rosa showed up with a framed copy of the article. "We're hanging this at the pharmacy," she said. "You're helping people you'll never meet. Linda would be so proud of this." "I hope so," I said. "It still feels strange, my worst moment in a magazine." "Your strongest moment," Rosa corrected, echoing Jessica's words. She hung it near the prescription counter at Miller's. Dr. Miller added a small sign beneath it. "If you or someone you know is experiencing elder abuse, ask us for resources." That evening, I was washing dishes, routine now comforting, when my phone rang. Unknown number, area code 804, Richmond, Virginia. I froze. The phone kept ringing in my hand. My thumb hovered over the green button. Ethan's call was a door I wasn't ready to open, not locked forever, just not today, not yet, maybe October 4th, 2026. I let it ring, watched the screen until it went to voicemail. Stood there in my kitchen phone, warm in my palm, Linda's recipe box on the counter, her ring around my neck. "Not yet," I whispered. "Not yet, Ethan." The voicemail notification appeared. 6 minutes, 47 seconds. I set the phone down, didn't listen. Went outside to check the roses in the fading November light. New buds everywhere. The garden was thriving. When I came back inside, the voicemail notification was still there, waiting. I went to bed without listening to it. The next morning, November 3rd. Day 41, I woke to a text from Rosa. "Did you get a call last night? Because Ethan called doctor. Miller too said he read the article and needs to tell you something urgent about Britney's trial." I sat up in bed, stared at the text. Urgent, about Britney's trial. My phone sat on the nightstand. The voicemail notification glowed, one new message, 6:47. Suddenly, it wasn't just about me and Ethan anymore. It was about the case. about Britney, about something that might affect my safety, my legal victory, something I might need to know. I picked up the phone, stared at the voicemail. My finger hovered over the play button, but I didn't press it. Not yet. I texted Rosa back. What did he tell Dr. Miller? Her response came immediately. He wouldn't say details, just that it's about Britney's trial, and you need to hear it directly from him. He sounded scared, Walter. Not manipulative, scared. I looked at Linda's photo on my nightstand, the one from Lake Norman 2015. What do I do, honey? But Linda wasn't there to answer. The voicemail sat on my phone like a grenade with the pin half pulled. I could ignore it, delete it unheard, maintain my boundary, or I could listen, and maybe learn something I needed to know. I got dressed, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table with the phone in front of me. The article was still open on my laptop coming home. 400,000 readers, 3 abuse victims asking for help, my story helping strangers, and my son 6 minutes and 47 seconds away with urgent information about the woman who'd tried to destroy me. I touched Linda's ring through my shirt. Survival, not revenge. But survival meant staying informed, meant knowing if there was a threat. I picked up the phone, stared at the voicemail one more time. Then Rosa knocked on my door. On day 43, I woke up at 6:47 a.m., and my first thought wasn't about the eviction, the lawsuit, or my son. It was about whether I had enough coffee for the week, and that's how I knew I was finally healing. The morning light came through my bedroom window, my bedroom in my house on Mimosa Avenue, and I lay there for a moment just breathing. No panic, no grief spiral. Just the quiet awareness that I needed to pick up coffee on my way home from work. That's what healing felt like. Mundane, boring, beautiful. I made breakfast, tended the roses full of blooms now thriving, drove to Miller's pharmacy and clocked in at 8 a.m. like I had for 30 years. Dr. Miller found me restocking the blood pressure medications around 10:30. Walter, he said, do you have a minute? My office. I followed him back, sat down in the chair across from his desk, the same chair where I'd sat through his father's death, through the pandemic, through 1,000 ordinary workdays. He slid a folder across the desk. Walter, I want to offer you a 20% partnership in the pharmacy. I stared at the folder, didn't open it. Harrison the First. 30 years you've been here, he continued. Through my father's illness, the pandemic, everything. You've kept this place running when I couldn't. You've earned this. And after watching what you survived these past 6 weeks, Walter, you've spent 43 days reclaiming your home. Let's make your work feel like home too. I opened the folder. Partnership agreement, 20% stake, profit sharing, my name on the business license. I don't know what to say, I managed. Say yes, Dr. Miller said, smiling. Here's what you need to know about healing from trauma. It doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It whispers in the mundane moment. You realize you're thinking about grocery lists instead of survival. I said yes. We shook hands, signed papers. By 11 a.m., I was a business owner, a partner, not just an employee who could be discarded, someone with equity, with value, with a stake in something that mattered. After 30 years of being treated like disposable labor in my own family, Dr. Miller had just made me indispensable in my workplace. I worked the rest of my shift in a daze of quiet pride. At 1 p.m., Rosa texted lunch usual spot. I met her at the diner on Euclid Avenue. She was already in our booth, 2 waters on the table. So, she said as I sat down, you're a business owner now, Dr. Miller texted me. Apparently, I said, still doesn't feel real. It's real, and you deserve it. We ordered, made small talk. But there was something in the air between us, something unspoken but present. Rosa reached across the table, touched my hand lightly. Walter, she said quietly, we could try this, if you wanted. I looked at her. At this woman who'd shown up with cleaning supplies and refused to let me reclaim my house alone. Who'd sat with me while I cried. Who'd become the steadiest presence in my life. Rosa and I sat across from each other in that diner booth, and we both knew what could happen, and we both chose what we needed instead of what we wanted. And somehow, that felt more loving than a kiss ever could. I turned my hand over, squeezed hers gently, then let go. I think we could, I said. But I also think I need my best friend more than I need a romance, and I don't want to risk losing what we have. Rosa smiled, not disappointed, relieved. Me too, she said. God, me too. What we have, it saved my life these past 6 weeks. Mine too. We ate lunch, laughed, made plans to help Patricia with her church fundraiser. The moment passed, and we were still us, just clearer about what us meant. After lunch, I drove to Sharon Memorial Park Cemetery. I'd been avoiding it 43 days of reclaiming my house, my work, my life, but I hadn't been back to Linda's grave since the funeral in June. I brought roses from the garden, the ones she'd planted, the ones that had survived Britney's neglect and my absence and everything else. Her headstone was simple. Linda Marie Kincaid, 1967 to 2023. Beloved wife and mother. I knelt down, placed the roses against the stone. "Honey," I said out loud, "I'm not the man you married. I'm not even the man who lost you. I'm whoever comes next, and I think you'd tell me that's okay. I think you'd tell me to live." The wind moved through the cemetery trees. November air cool and clean. I stayed there for a while, talking to her, telling her about the partnership, about Rosa, about Ethan's letter and the boundary I'd set, about the magazine article and the 3 strangers who had asked for help. I told her I was healing, and for the first time since she died, I felt like she wasn't gone, just different, present in memory rather than body, still with me, but not in a way that kept me trapped. "I miss you," I said finally, "but I think I'm going to be okay." I stood up, touched the headstone one more time, walked back to my car. Instead of driving straight home, I took the long way through Dilworth, past the historic homes Linda and I used to walk by on Sunday afternoons, past Mount Zion Baptist where Patricia had taken me, past Miller's Pharmacy where my name was now on the partnership papers. The autumn leaves falling on Dilworth's historic streets weren't dying. They were letting go, making space for whatever came next, and I finally understood that's what healing looks like. When I got home, I checked the mailbox out of habit. Bills, a pharmacy supply catalog, and one envelope with no return address. But I recognized the handwriting immediately. Ethan's! I stood at the mailbox for a long moment. Then I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, no letter, just a date, a time, and an address. October 4th, 2026, 10 a.m., 347, Monument Avenue, Richmond, Virginia. At the bottom in his careful handwriting, "If you want to." No pressure, just if you want to. 1 year, just like I promised. I folded the paper, looked at the date again. October 4th, 2026. Exactly 1 year from the day I'd set the boundary. The day I told him to ask me again in 12 months. He was honoring it, respecting it, not pushing, not begging, not violating, just offering. I walked back to my house, set the paper on the kitchen counter next to Linda's recipe box, next to the drawer that held his 2 letters. I didn't know yet if I'd go. October 4th, 2026 was still 11 months away. 11 months to keep healing. 11 months to decide if whoever comes next included space for a son who destroyed me and then spent a year rebuilding himself. But I knew one thing for certain, the boundary was holding. And so was the possibility. I made dinner, tended the roses in the fading November light, sat at Linda's table with a cup of coffee and the partnership papers Dr. Miller had given me. On day 43, I woke up thinking about coffee. By day 43 evening, I was thinking about the future, not with certainty, not with answers, but with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace, not happiness, not triumph, not closure, just peace. And for now, that was enough. I've had time to look back at everything, and if there's one thing I wish I had understood sooner, it's this: don't give blind trust just because someone is family. In my family story, I confused love with endurance. I thought silence meant sacrifice, that patience meant preserving peace. But it doesn't. Staying silent in the face of wrongdoing only allows it to grow. This isn't just a family story, it's a warning. If you ever see yourself in a situation like mine, don't follow my path. Set boundaries early. Protect your worth. As for dad revenge, I don't see it as revenge. I see it as reclaiming truth and dignity. But if we're being honest, yes, it became a form of dad revenge. A father with nothing left to lose, holding on to the only thing that still mattered, the truth. And if there's a lesson in all of this, it's this: kindness does not mean allowing yourself to be destroyed. In every family story, you still have the responsibility to protect your own life. I believe God sees everything, even when people try to hide behind lies. And in the end, justice doesn't come from anger, it comes from clarity and strength. This is my story, a dad revenge that didn't begin with hatred, but ended with awakening. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. I'd truly like to hear your thoughts. What would you do if you were placed in a situation like this where your own family turned against you? Share your perspective in the comments. If this story meant something to you, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next chapter. And just a quick note, while this story draws inspiration from real-life themes, certain elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If this content isn't for you, feel free to explore other videos that better match your interests.